Quit messing with the microphone, Sam. God.
That's how I do.
You're a professional. Act like one.
Getting me some warning.
Well, anyway. Almost in agreement, everybody. It's showtime. We're almost in agreement at gmail.com, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube. And now he gets up and he's walking away. Go to the website, almostinagreement.com. Check out nothing new, exciting there because I haven't updated to the Voter Guide 23 for the upcoming city races this summer. Go to Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, MySpace. No, we don't have a MySpace page. We do have an Instagram, but we don't do anything on it. And give us a like, share there. All your favorite podcast providers. We've got all those things too. Tell friends about us. We're going to keep working on what we work on. We're going to do what we do. I know we got a little recap on the McAllister story because I think it's fucking nuts. And it continues and all this kind of bullshit. Knox County Schools offloading their custodial staff, but then they're not. That's another one that's a news story. Breaking news on that one, so we'll talk about that. I'll blow Sam's mind. I've been talking to Kim Frazier about my KUB situation, and we're moving on from there. So anyway, almost agreement time, boys and girls. Here we go. Hey, buddy.
Hey.
What's happening with ya?
Wasabi.
We're still losing our hockey games?
I hadn't looked yet. It was in between the second and third period.
Yeah, we're still in between periods. Oh, that's you. It's totes you. Oh, picking up some feedback from your phone. Interesting. All right, we learned a new thing. My Pens game's tied 2-2 with them Vegas Golden Knights.
I saw that.
With our prior goalie, Mr. Marc-Andre. He was in Vegas.
Fleury.
I'm pretty sure he's still in Vegas.
No, he's on the Wild now.
Oh. Okay. Anyway.
Yeah, 38, 39.
U.S. made it in the World Cup.
Yep.
Made it to the round of 16.
So Germany is out for like the second time in a row. Apparently, I guess the previous World Cup, they were the defending champions.
Right. They won 4-2 today, and we're still eliminated.
Yeah, 1-4-2. Still got it.
And we're still eliminated. And so it's kind of weird because the other game, regardless, like I think there was
2-1 Japan over Spain.
Right, but it didn't matter. Like I think no matter what, they were both getting through unless Germany won by like 5 or something ridiculous.
Collusion.
Yeah. I mean, that's the way the round robin group plays end up.
Some of it, yeah. It's like, hey, let's go in and agree. Like we're not going to beat the shit out of each other and let's not wear each other out. And
right. What's the point? I mean, it's strategery. It's standard proper strategery.
Hey, you know what? Wink, wink. If we tie,
ties a win for those guys. So anyway, I had a little faux pas on the recording there. Sorry about that. Yeah. So we got the Netherlands Saturday morning for the U.S. Iran asked FIFA to expel the U.S. from the World Cup. See that story?
No.
In Iran, in U.S. Soccer's website or whatever.
Yeah, I saw they didn't use
they removed the
official flag. It's like
Arabic
writing.
Whatever the Arabic writing is in the middle of the Iranian flag. Yeah. The U.S. removed that in their Gamecast on their website and stuff like that. It's like, here's the schedule. U.S. plays Iran, but it was the U.S. flag and a modified Iranian flag. And Iran wanted us kicked out of the tournament because of it. Oh. Which, I mean, FIFA has been very, what's the word I want to use here? Accommodating to Qatar's wants and desires for this World Cup.
Yeah, apparently there was an armband that a lot of teams wanted to wear that I guess everyone agreed. They're like, okay, fine. We don't want to piss off the host. We won't wear the armbands. Yeah,
it was a pride something.
Yeah, I think it was, yeah.
One of the teams got in trouble because I think it was it the Saudis? I can't remember who it was. It was one of the Middle Eastern teams. They all lined up for their, before every game, they all line up and do a picture or whatever. The starting lineup is a picture.
Yeah.
And they all lined up and put their hands over their mouths.
I think that was Germany. I think Germany did that. There may have been other teams that did it too, but I think it was Germany that put their hands up over their mouths.
It's going to drive me nuts because I know I feel very confident.
I think there was a Middle Eastern team that kind of mocked them for doing it, and I think they ended up doing it, trying to mock the German team for doing it.
Oh.
I think that was the story that I heard.
Yeah, you're right. It was a German team. Well.
Yeah, but I think there was another team that kind of like mocked them for it after they did it.
But they did it making fun of Germany for doing it and losing to.
Yeah. And I'm not 100% sure what the original German thing was. If it was just mocking them, like silencing dissent, basically.
Well, apparently they were planning on wearing that armband. they were one of the nations that really wanted to wear the armband. The team was like, we're going to wear this armband in solidarity for human rights. It's like, okay, no, you're not. And they're like, okay, well, if you're going to shut us up, we're going to show you.
Yeah, we'll put our hands over our mouths.
And then go lose.
Everyone will know what that means.
And then go lose the game.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I mean, I love the World Cup. World Cup's my favorite soccer. Like the World Cup is what I enjoy most about soccer. I don't know if it's a nationalist thing in me or what, but like I don't dislike Premier League and like top level professional soccer, but the World Cup is a whole different animal to me. Like, I feel like the sport in general.
It's where some of those like great players like have to get along. It's like I know like we both play on like opposing great teams in Spanish League, Premier League.
But I feel like it is a sport in an amateur event, for lack of a better word, that is the World Cup. It is a when
countries take it totally seriously.
Yeah, I mean hockey did it too. When hockey used to take the break to go play in the Olympics, hockey got pretty serious. But like a lot of basketball and stuff was just kind of a joke. But like it felt amateur watching pros play in the Olympics and other sports.
Yeah,
soccer doesn't feel that way to me. Like soccer to me, like you've got the Messis and the Ronaldos that are at the top of the professional part of the game, where you would see like in baseball, one of the things baseball's having issue with is a lot of players, even though they make the MVP All-Star games, they don't want to go play it. Hockey players are the same thing. They don't want to go play it because it's a chance at injury.
It's been a handful. Like I think Ovechkin did it last year, but it's not that common that great stars are like, hey, I'm not going to go play the All-Star game.
Right, but
because I mean, there's a slim
have
chance,
you heard a story
you've got a lot less like checking and shit like that, like rough
because
stuff.
it's an amateur ass version of the game for the All-Star game. That's my point. Is that
to an extent, yeah.
Is that like for a sport that pays as high as soccer does, to have it basically an amateur world event that is the World Cup, that the top level pros not only go and play, but they go and fucking play, and it's full on. They're like Pulisic. Like he's questionable to play in this game on Saturday because the injury he took.
Well, he finished out the half.
Yeah. And then he got subbed
off the field. Yeah, I only saw the highlights of it. But yeah,
right. He got subbed in half. But like, I mean, it was essentially like
it didn't look like that crazy of a.
I mean,
but it was all in slow mo, so it's kind of hard to tell. Like
he got like a knee like right in the waistline of the gut.
Yeah,
and I mean, like the thing about soccer, the number one thing about pro soccer to me is how fast and powerful those guys are, and how little it looks like it when you're watching it on TV.
Right.
Like I always I remember watching it was like an MLS game.
Those guys don't have like fat padding. Like it's just muscle right under that skin.
I remember I was watching like an MLS game and it was like it was in Portland or something like that, and it was a rainy day game. It wasn't pouring; it was just sprinkling rain. And I remember seeing these guys, and they would get tripped up like they always do in soccer, but they slide like 20 yards.
Right.
And it's like, wait a minute, I don't care how slick that field is,
because they're running like 15, 20.
You got to be moving quick to trip and slide that far. There's no other excuse than you are moving fast. And then, but anyway, my point, going back to the main point, is that for the amateur thing that is the World Cup, it's the only one that I can think of where the pros go and really go play and want to play.
And what aspect is it amateur?
Well, it's not. It's not. I use amateur as opposed to Premier League or La Liga or Bundesliga or anything like that. That's the pro teams. Like this isn't Man City versus I don't know.
Right, but I mean at the same time, for the majority of the quote unquote good teams, like. These are literally like the best players throughout the world that just
right. But are they paid?
Happen to call that place their nationality?
Does the U.S. team pay commensurate salaries for what these guys are worth playing for their professional teams? I know Ronaldo just got cut from Man U or whatever. But what was Man U paying Ronaldo? What is Portugal paying him to play on the national team?
No idea.
I don't know that it's anything. I'm sure it's something, but it's nothing. I would be.
Yeah, the men's national teams get paid.
I would be super surprised if it was anywhere close.
That was the one big push about the women's national team,
right? Of
trying to get equal pay of the men's national team.
Now, I will say the U.S. national team versus MLS players might be a close salary just because of how not big the MLS is.
Right.
But again, I mean, Ronaldo's $1 billion contract or something stupid. The guy gets paid an obnoxious sum of money. There's no way Portugal's.
But yeah, for years, like he was the top player.
Right, and there's nowhere. The point is, there's no way Portugal's paying an equivalent to the number of games.
Right.
If they run the whole thing, they play 8 games.
Right, but you're playing a lot less. Like even like the qualifiers, including into it, yeah, you're playing a lot less games.
Right, I'm just saying, like, but your
season.
But again, but I would be. I'm sure it's a findable thing on the interwebs, but I would doubt that Portugal pays per game anywhere near what Man U was paying, even in this late stage in Ronaldo's career, in a per game basis.
I would assume they don't. That the pay is proportionate across the team. You would hope.
I don't know. That's another good point too. I don't know. But again, the moral, the idea is that's what I mean by amateur. It's not the level of pay that the professional leagues pay these guys to play, but they still go out there and play just as hard as they're playing for their paychecks.
Well, I'd say for most of the world, I mean, playing for your country in the World Cup is like the most kind of coveted prize.
Right. It beats a.
Oh, great! I won the Premier League, but I won the World Cup with my country.
Right.
Is totally different.
Especially if you're like a Messi or a Ronaldo, because those countries don't put out the players like they are. Well,
Spain won the Euros not that long ago.
That's Spain.
Spain had a top left. Had a top team.
I would think.
Oh,
that,
sorry. Yeah,
I would think
Ronaldo's Portugal. Sorry.
I mean, Premier League is the premier of all pro leagues. Is that a fair assessment?
That's debatable. Because I think Real Madrid and Barcelona in the La Liga, the Spanish league, I think have done better than most of the teams. Like I want to say it's the Spanish team that have gone to some of the most recent Champions League cups.
No, I good, but I don't know if that's. But as having a couple teams making the run versus the league as a whole, to me, as the amateur soccer fan that I am, I think. Of all the pro soccer leagues, Premier League is number one. I think La Liga's up there, Bundesliga's up there, whatever.
I mean, Man U's gone down, but I mean, Man City, Liverpool,
Chelsea, even though they're not that as good as they've been,
right.
Arsenal.
But I mean, now you've got PSG that is Paris Saint-Germain.
Right. I don't know any other French teams.
Mbappe, Messi's now on PSG.
I don't know any other French teams.
Gotcha. There's a handful.
I'm just saying, we just listed off in our amateur.
I think the French league has kind of gone. What do they call it?
I don't know any German teams.
You don't know any?
Not their
Bayern Munich.
Okay. Is there a Bayer Berlin?
There's a Bayer Leverkusen.
Okay. Now that you say it, I recognize them, but they don't come off the top of my head like Man City, Arsenal, Liverpool, Crystal Palace. I don't even know if they're in the Premier League. They might have been relegated.
That's possible.
But
there's definitely been some teams that had been in the Premier League for a while and
it may be down. And to be fair, it may be a confirmation bias because NBC carries a bunch of Premier League games,
right.
And so, and especially Sunday morning when I'm waiting for U.S. football to start playing and I'm flipping channels, NBC might have like a big Premier League matchup that I'm trying to watch passively as I'm waiting for U.S. football to come on. Anyway, the moral of the story is that's why I like the World Cup so much. I like the sport in general, but to me, the way that the World Cup at least feels like it puts forth the best players putting forth real effort to play in what is essentially a legacy-only tournament. It's not I would say that for some of the U.S. soccer guys that are on smaller MLS teams, this may be a chance for them to get on the map, to be seen by a Man City or a PSG or one of those. I mean,
they keep pointing out that we have one of the younger teams,
right? And we've got 3 kids. There's 2 guys on our team that are on European leagues. Everybody else is an MLS player.
Yeah, I want to say Pulisic plays for either in the Premier League or the Bundesliga.
Pretty sure it's Premier League.
I think he was in the Bundesliga.
Maybe. I don't know. But point being is so for that guy, for some of those guys that are on the team that are maybe good for their MLS team but not European League good, this might be a chance to show the European scouts that they're good enough to play with the big boys and stuff like that. But for the most part, it's a legacy tournament. I'm Messi. I've won a gajillion league championships in whatever league for whatever pro team I played on. I've won
but I still don't have a World Cup under my belt for everything that I've done for being one of the best players for the
ever
past
to
decade.
touch the ball. Right? I mean, ever to touch the ball. And he cannot do it with his national team because he's got.
There's a handful of other great Argentinians. They've got Angel Di Maria. I can't name too many other Argentinians.
Right.
I mean, they've got a few, but as far as a main starting 11 that has more than half of great players that play all across the globe, I think they are kind of lacking in that aspect.
Right. It always gets me
But it's not always the greatest that end up winning a game.
True. Well, I mean, again, because Messi can't win a World Cup, and that's crazy. Ronaldo's the second player ever to play in 5 World Cups.
Really?
This is his 5th, and likely his last.
Saw something about that. That Manuel Neuer for the goalkeeper for Germany. I think he's been playing for a while.
Yeah.
He's getting up there. Which goalkeepers don't have to run around as much. But it's still crazy. Like, you don't see the stat very often, but I think they still average like 3 to 5 miles a game.
Sounds reasonable.
Essentially running around their box.
I did hear there was a guy, what's that ball? He's one of the very few referees that a lot of people know by name. Really skinny, bald dude, kind of scary looking.
Can't remember. I saw some little thing on him.
Apparently he's on like the rules committee.
Yeah, I heard like he finally retired as being a referee.
Right, but he's apparently on the rules committee for FIFA. And there's discussion of changing it to either 60-minute halves or having a stopped clock.
Why would you do 60-minute? Why would you increase the game?
Because they were talking about it. What was it like? Yeah, I mean, I know you're not a big pro football fan, but like pro football, they have this AWS, Amazon Web Services, this next level stats thing, which it's really kind of dumb. Like it doesn't really mean anything. It's like there's a 17% chance that play was successful. It's like, yeah, we just saw it happen. That was one of the 17%. I get it, but like there is some like high level statistics they're putting out that weren't old school statistics. Anyway, one of these computer dork groups is doing it in football, and they say that like in an average 90-minute game, I think it was like 55 and a half minutes in the last 2 years. It's like 55 minutes of active play in a 90-minute game.
Right.
And so the rules committee is basically like, well, either we're going to, which they have been doing in this World Cup, is a lot more stoppage time than normal.
Yeah, I saw.
And they had a couple
like
almost
14, like purposefully adding minutes onto the end of the game.
Like 14 minutes in one of them this year.
Yeah,
which is, I mean, that's a huge number.
Like that's not injury time per se, quote unquote.
Right. It's just It's like when they do it when it's late in the game and the team that's winning does a sub, and the sub walking off takes 5 minutes to get to the bench before the new guy can come on.
Yeah, I saw one explanation that they wanted to like add like more action. They were basically just wanted like they knew the World Cup obviously has a large viewership, but they wanted to like I guess increase it by a little bit more, even just 5 or 10 minutes.
Well, I mean, I think it's a fair assessment to me, especially when you're looking at like one of the problems soccer has, especially in U.S. markets, is the ad model. Right. Is really hard for them to capitalize on because there's
digital stuff. It's so much easier now than it used to be.
Right, but there's so much. It's still less than having a ad break where you get 3 ads in there real quick.
Right,
and it's not long enough that you can get up and get some nachos made, but it's just long enough to make sure they can throw the information at you, but you don't leave because it's a short enough break. Yeah. And so like that's one of the things that they're trying to figure out how to try to capitalize on to grow the sport. And what they don't want is you getting up and leaving and missing the ads because player X is down on the field injured for 7 minutes. And then, it's just basically they want eyeball time and they want to make sure it's the action is happening so you're watching it. And so a stop clock would be one of the solution. And so basically when the ref pauses his watch, the actual display clock pauses with it is the idea.
But it's not very often that the ref actually stops it. Like for a direct kick, he would blow his whistle, which at this point doesn't technically stop time.
Right.
But it
right. But again, same thing.
It notifies there's a foul. It's like, hey, stop play right now.
Right. Set the ball there.
We have a kick. Yeah.
Right. And then some of those, it's set the ball there, and then he has to go over and draw the line around the ball. This is where the ball is.
It's close
and then he goes and draws the other line to show where the wall can line up at. Right. And then he's got to push guys back. It doesn't
happen as often.
Right.
It's just like a regular, just like
right. But I'm saying, but you add those couple up together as well as when a guy gets injured and stays down for a while, and it's actually a stoppage of play.
That's why you have a good ref that's keeping track of the stoppage time.
Right. But
at this point, I'm sure there's probably a few people that kind of help keep better track of that.
Yeah. So anyway, that's one of the things that they were talking about, and I thought it was interesting. Like that's one of the things. Well, I think one of the reasons soccer is the most popular sport on the planet is because it's the easiest game to play.
So they want to do 2 60-minute halves.
I think that's what they said.
Of 2
or maybe it was Maybe it was 30-minute halves, but with the stop clock. so that it's 30 minutes of actual play. So if there's a stoppage for 10 seconds or 2 minutes, the clock stops and the ball gets set. And as soon as the ball is touched and we're back into active play, the clock starts back up.
I don't know.
But 30 minutes of that.
I think there's enough traditionalists throughout the world that would have been like,
I think so too.
No, yeah, we're not going to do that.
I don't know. I mean, the question I guess is that the
I don't see it. I don't see a drastic added benefit to literally changing like the timing of the game up that much.
Well, I mean, it's perhaps a tacit threat that says, quit milking clock and play the game, right. Or we're going to do something to make it so you don't have a choice.
Oh, there's definitely occasions where it gets grossly taken advantage of.
Sure.
To where you got the ball down in the corner and you got like 2 or 3 guys that are kind of kicking around each other and like kicking it off the opposing team's shin to make it go out of bounds.
So they can get a throw in.
Okay, I'm going to throw it. Oh, you want to come in and throw it? Okay, I'm going to set the ball down. Okay, you come in and throw it.
Right.
I'm going to run around. Like, oh, what? Never mind. Did you want to throw it? Okay, yeah, why don't you throw it, and I'll go run around out here for a second.
Well, but to me, the
like, oh, wait, never mind. We want to do a sub right now.
The hard part in soccer to me is like watching the U.S. game, this U.S.-Iran game, and they scored the one late in the first half. And they basically came out in the second half in waste time.
All right.
The totality of the strategy of the second half was waste time.
Like I was saying, a lot of the shit they do like in the corner is just wasting time.
Right. So
they're trying to bleed the clock.
Right. And so to me, that is that it produces poor sport. It's hard, it's not as fun to watch. It's not as exciting. I can understand it. I can rationalize what's going on and why they're acting the way they're acting.
You changing that isn't really going to add that much more time onto the clock.
For some of it, but I think it would change strategy more than anything. That say, we need to win. We have to win this game. U.S. had to win this game.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's either we drop back, play defense, try to kill time, which is harder to do in this new format if they were to change to it, or we continue to press, try to get up 2. Continue to press, try to get up 2 or 3 goals, so then we can make a mistake, and they can score on us, and we're not in elimination fear anymore. And so to me, it would encourage more offense, which is the biggest complaint from the general American public and why they don't like soccer, is it's a low-scoring game and it can end in ties. I mean, we've passed that phase in World Cup. I'm not agree. I'm not saying I'm on the same boat as these people. I'm just saying to grow the sport, to grow the audience of the sport, and especially in the U.S., growing the audience to the sport will grow the pool of players over generations and make us a more regular world participant in how hard like in the big boys classes of soccer, that the MLS would be up there in the conversation with Bundesliga and La Liga and stuff like that. That's how you get there, is you get it so that it becomes the most popular sport. Because the thing is, because soccer doesn't lend as well to technology. Football lends well to technology. Baseball, if you're a stats guy, baseball is more fun now that there's more technology. What are you thinking?
I was trying to remember what the fuck the name of the French league is actually called.
Oh.
It was bugging me that I don't remember this.
La Petite. I don't know what it is. I don't at all.
I did see an interesting stat. I think it was a game, or maybe like one of the last games of the World Series, that there was talk, and I think they're still trying to develop it, and they've already started doing it in some of the minor leagues, but having a camera basically as the home plate umpire or as almost as like a second opinion, basically, in case there's ever any kind of dispute. But I think it was part of one of the last games of the World Series that same camera, that umpire behind the play, which is probably pretty rare, like was 100% right on every single.
Yeah, I know they're in there.
Which I definitely don't envy a fucking MLB plate umpire these days, with even just like crazy pitches. I mean, they've thrown out a few of the crazy, split finger, spitball, shit like that, or whatever.
Right.
To where you really got to see a baseball going 103, 105 miles an hour or whatever, and see exactly where it came in. Where that strike zone changes depending on the batter themselves is going to change a little bit, whether it's above their shoulders or whatever. Yeah,
I won't lie. I'm a little bit of a traditionalist in baseball. I'd rather have the umps calling the games. I don't know. I would like to see soccer become a stronger sport in the U.S. It's getting better.
It's just called League One.
Have you seen the? I haven't watched it yet. It's there's a FIFA documentary on Netflix.
Mm-mm.
Yeah, it's basically a documentary about how Qatar bribed their way into being host, and they're just the whole process of getting these World Cup bids and stuff like that. And it's kind of weird because I guess the U.S. was in the bid for it, and Bill Clinton was there. Bill Clinton was apparently part of the committee that the U.S. U.S. Soccer or U.S.
Really?
Commerce. I don't know if it was like part of
94.
Which
is here 96?
That was 96, 94, whatever. It doesn't matter.
Yeah,
but yeah, apparently, but I guess this was. This.
Yeah, it was 2004. Because then 2008 was South Africa, or.
It's a 2000. Yeah, so 96, 2000, 2004, 2008, 2012.
Yeah.
Whatever. Anyway.
16, 2020.
But it's 2022 now.
Shit. Yeah, we'll figure it out.
Anyway. But I mean, it was
part of the selection committee?
Not the selection committee, but the committee for the United States bidding
for
to be selected.
Gotcha.
I guess. I mean, he was in the stands. Like, he was in the audience as they announced the Qatar. And this would have been back in, 2014 or something like that.
Should they?
They said,
I know they do it
they said it's like
6 to 8 years out. Or
it's 2 cups out. So you have the one that's coming up very soon scheduled. We already know who that is. So I don't know what the next 2 are.
The U.S. 2026.
Is it U.S. 2026?
Yep.
Okay.
Well, sorry. Canada, U.S., Mexico. North America. North America, yeah.
So 2030 World Cup.
Yeah, I don't know if they've called that yet.
African biz experts say a Saudi World Cup is possible in 2030. So they have not.
What?
They've not said so.
We have to do it in December again. Fuck that. I'm sorry. You guys can't host a World Cup when we normally do this major tournament. We do it only every 4 years.
Morocco has bid. Uruguay, Argentina, Paraguay, Chile, Spain, Portugal, Ukraine. Yeah. That could be interesting.
I mean, I was talking to somebody about this the other day, and it's kind of that weird thing, and it's the same thing that happens with the Olympics. Is you have these places that want to bid for it, and you have places that hasn't been there before, and you're like, hey, maybe we should give them that chance. But at the same time, especially for the Olympics, do you have that infrastructure to do that? And with the World Cup, do you have enough stadiums to have these major games of, tens of thousands of people that want to be able to go to these games? I think that it's going to be a sellout, like almost every single game is going to be a sellout stadium.
I think the Chinese got the best deal ever, having a summer and a winter technically being hosted out of the same city, so they got to reuse.
Yeah, they were able to reuse.
Because I mean, the
bird's nest,
right? The bird's nest main thing, they used it both, which is pretty cool. But I mean, you go back to Sochi or whatever. They talk about Sochi was like a little chalet town,
right?
And
they're putting that shit together literally. They were all sorts of crazy pictures,
right? But they were kicking people out of their houses. The government was taking land from people to make these different event sites to it.
Right.
And it's that's rough, and okay, yes, it's a good thing. It is a potential positive for the economics of that nation, and especially that region in the nation when you get a big one like Russia. But it's I don't know, is that a good thing? Is that something that should be FIFA's responsibility to be part of their determining factor? It's let's put it in.
I think so. I mean, because that goes into the fan experience, and then how people are going to view that.
No, I'm agreeing with you in the sense that should we put it in rural Uganda because it would be great for rural Uganda, but can they handle it?
Right.
Can they handle it be the bigger question?
I think one of the last ones, I think Germany did it great. I mean, just because they have that infrastructure of
and they have something to do with it when it's all said.
They have a generally good mass transit system to get people in and out of the cities.
Right,
So
but
I've
it's
heard
a
of
little
people
bit
that are 100, or an hour and a half outside of Qatar, like living in like tent cities of
right,
people
that are
like
busing in and
right.
like literal like
They're just trying to find a
container
place to
hotels
stay. Right.
popped up and all sorts of shit. And it's like, I mean, I see both sides of it in the sense that it is a good thing to promote economic growth for some of these nations that aren't there yet,
Right.
to try to help them get there. And this is an excuse for them to get there, not to mention the billions of dollars that get spent over the span of
Right.
the tournament and all the other stuff that goes on. But the inverse being,
But
well,
at the end of the day, it's like how many times have the Olympics happened and then you see 10, 15 years later
right.
something of like,
Like,
this is what the stadium used to be that we spent millions of dollars on
Right.
that is now derelict.
Well, like if it's 2026 is in the States, then I wonder what the process is for stadium hosts. Like, is
I think
Nashville?
they've already picked them. Like, no, Atlanta's already been picked.
Because Nashville's trying to build a new
their brand
stadium.
new Mercedes Stadium.
Right, but Nashville's apparently getting a new stadium. We'll see in this legislative
Right.
session if the state approves it or not.
I thought I looked something the other day, and I think they've already picked the sites for all the games.
Because I'm saying, but I mean that could be a huge. Well, I mean Nashville has a separate soccer stadium currently anyway.
Yeah.
But that could be a hugely impactful thing to help kick that over. Because I mean, Nashville could host it. They physically are capable of it. It wouldn't be the end of the world to have a World Cup match there.
Okay. I think
Like it wouldn't shut it down like it would shut down other places.
I saw talk of it, but I think there was that kind of like waffle of a guarantee.
I mean, the new stadium won't be up
Stadium.
yet. There's no way the new stadium
Right.
will be there yet by 2026.
Right.
Or it'd be a real fight to get it there.
Right.
But you would have additional dollars from the U.S. soccer committee and stuff like that helping with the process, I would think.
Possibly. I don't know. I don't know how that works.
No, I don't know either. That's good. Fair point. But
It's like, we give you some money, but will you put on our whatever tax document that we can write that off?
yeah, something.
And you guys take the hit on it or whatever?
But I mean, I think it's I get where I don't know. You bring up a very good point, and I'm not sure.
We didn't have
Which
it in
is
Rio. I mean, for at least like the World Cup, I don't know. I'm sure they had some of those instances in the Olympics. But there was one stadium that was built literally like in the middle of the jungle. Like there wasn't like airplane access to it, and I'm pretty sure you had to take like a boat to get in and out of there.
Right.
That they had issues with like insects and birds and shit with them putting on the giant spotlights because they were in the middle of the fucking jungle.
Right. I mean, it's poorly planned out.
And it's like, how are you going to use that after we're done with this? Like,
Right.
I don't think anyone else is going to have that as their home stadium. Like, there may be a team close enough to it. They're like, fuck yeah, we'll play in a brand new stadium. But as far as like getting fans in and out of there to have it be a sustainable stadium.
Yeah, but I get what you're saying, and I'm kind of torn in the conversation. Like, part of me is like, yes, I agree with you in the sense that it's somewhat wasteful, but at least it's something that can help build an economy that isn't there, and that is a bigger positive.
And that's where that gamble is.
Here's
like, is this going to like actually uplift this new country and new city and
right.
bring some shit to them? It's like, hey, we finally.
It's the inner communist in me. I'm about to say something
we'll give you a little bit of money. You build this new stadium, and like, hey, you've got this new stadium. Maybe you can start bringing in some more revenue. You can have concerts there, whatever there.
Well, even that, I mean, just the event and all the stuff in and of itself of the World Cup is going to bring billions of dollars into your economy, and if you can manage that well,
but that is short-lived.
You could but if you could manage that well, that can propel you 10 years ahead in your community goals.
Possibly, yeah.
You know, stuff that you're wanting to do and you're working towards and you can't afford and different things are in the way. This can help propel you further down your planned growth path because we're bringing all this outside stuff in. Or it ends up wasteful like Sochi, because apparently Sochi went back to being like a little rural whatever and there's nothing there anymore.
Yeah. I would say 98% of the world had never heard the word Sochi before.
Right. But the other side of it though would be that then all you're doing is creating more wealth for the already wealthy countries.
Yeah.
You know, and is that a net get? Like, it's easier. Like basically you're making it easier for a Tennessee Titans football team to have a better, newer stadium for their professional league,
right? By
doing this giant national program.
Like, you're going to help us float the cost? Great.
Right.
Yeah, I want to say like there's a bunch of Japanese businessmen or whatever that are under scrutiny for the Olympics that did they just happen in Japan or about to happen in Japan? I think they just happened in Japan.
Yeah, I don't know.
Kind of lost track of the Olympics. I think they just had the Summer Olympics in Japan.
I thought that we just had the winter
Olympics
the winter in Beijing again. I thought that was not this time around. You're right. I agree with you. I'm confused as well. It was winter.
I don't know, but apparently there's an investigation into corruption and misuse of.
Yeah, which is inevitable. I mean, it just is.
No, they just did the summer
in China.
Yeah, Japan. Yeah.
Okay.
2020, I think.
Well, there should have been a 22.
Or maybe it was
because they rolled them because they used to run the same year and they rolled it around.
Maybe it was 2022. Okay, yeah. So I guess it was most recent.
So it's every other year you have a winter, then a summer, then a winter, then a summer, then a winter.
Every 2 years. Yeah.
Right. Every even year there's one of them.
Right. I think it's the most recent one that happened in Japan. Yeah. It was 2022. Yeah. Fuck. This year's crazy.
That was this year. Holy shit.
Because there was a big thing about whether or not they were going to allow outside visitors in, but apparently there was a lot of and it happens in almost any World Cup or Olympic thing when you have something that big. There's corruption as far as the bidding process and the business contracts that become involved in it.
Which I mean, it's inevitable. Sadly,
right?
It just is. I don't know how you get away. I just don't know how It doesn't seem like there's
It's one of those weird things. It's well, you're not going to get the contract unless you grease some wheels. So to some people, it's accepted. That's just
it's part of the game.
Yeah, that's part of the game.
Yeah, I just think
the people want to be upstanding, and they're like, no, that's not how this shit goes. We want to do this on the up and up.
See, I think
no, you're not going to be able to get this done unless you grease some wheels.
I think if you're like a United States bidding for something like this, I think the play should be encouraged inside the U.S. Olympic Committee or the U.S. Soccer Federation or whatever the title is, that they go after assisting smaller markets. Don't host a World Cup and put it in Atlanta and put it in New York City and put it in these big major super stadiums that are already existing.
Well,
invest that money into the smaller markets to give them a better facility for smaller market programs.
Atlanta was one of the markets for '94.
Yeah,
last time they were here.
And Atlanta was the last host of the Olympics of the United States.
'96, yeah.
Yeah, that's where I got the '96 from earlier. But again, I mean that kind of worked out well because they got to cross use some of the facilities. Yeah, I would think
the Braves got a new stadium out of that. That's where
right. But I'm saying it's from the World Cup and the Olympics.
Right,
they got to use some of those facilities together as well.
Yeah.
And so
they're like, we wanted to build another stadium anyway. Wonderful timing.
Right, was the Georgia Dome part of that, or was the Georgia Dome already there?
Georgia Dome was already there.
Okay,
you were there. You get to march in it, right?
Yeah, I got to march in it 3 times
with the band,
with different bands, but yes,
or with the high school band.
Just the once with the high school band.
Okay,
it was a San Francisco Atlanta game. I remember that.
Yeah, I was trying to remember if that was our freshman or sophomore year.
I don't remember which year it was, but I do remember doing that.
I guess that would have been sophomore.
I remember doing. Yeah, it wouldn't have been freshman year because I wasn't in the marching band freshman year in high school.
Sophomore or junior.
Yeah.
I'm thinking we went Six Flags and.
Yeah, I'm thinking it was sophomore year because I think I was in Pitt that year. I was not on the field. Anyway, I think
I saw Steve Young.
I think. Yeah, I think it would be beneficial for the U.S. sports groups to try to push it in smaller markets. I don't understand why, especially now that we got booze allowed, I don't understand why they're not doing more stuff in Nayland. I don't understand why Nayland doesn't host a bowl game. There's 95 fucking bowl games. And we can't have a volunteer bowl?
Well, I think the concert thing has been basically fucking up the field. That they haven't wanted to have
no, they're doing.
I don't think you would want to have a concert and have literally everyone in the stands.
They had a number.
There's no field.
They're planning on it. They had 3 scheduled.
They've had very few. There was Michael Jackson back in the '80s,
right? But they've had
and Garth Brooks has done it once or twice. I think Kenny Chesney.
I think they had Garth.
Once,
I think they had Garth scheduled to do it again.
It's been very limited to how many people they let come in and actually allow people out on the field.
They had 3 scheduled in 2020 that all got canceled for pandemic. and they haven't had anything since. But when the SEC changed their rules and Tennessee changed their rules, allowing the state of Tennessee changed the rules about finances and having alcohol on facilities, UT and Neyland they're like, all right, let's go. We're not going to do a ton of stuff, but we're going to do a couple things.
Right.
And then as soon as they started scheduling stuff, the pandemic hit, and they've all been canceled.
For the longest time, like that was the thing that like nobody plays in Neyland. Like Michael Jackson in the 1983 or whatever was like the last person to play Neyland.
Kenny Chesney did it a little bit.
Yeah, and then Kenny Chesney. I guess Garth has done it. He did like a 3-night run, or
he did
turned into like a 4-night run.
No, that was at
which that was actually pretty cool to like hear of him doing that in like multiple stops.
That was at Thompson.
He had
that wasn't
3 games, right?
That wasn't.
But I think he did that. He did that in other cities as well. It's like, hey, we've sold out tickets, snap of a finger.
I know. I got mad because I bought some tickets to that.
We're gonna add another show.
I bought tickets to that, more planning to sell them than to go, and then he had another show, and I ended up selling them like $15 under cost.
Ah, shit.
Day of. No, actually, sorry. I
risk reward.
I gave them to the shop, and we gave them away to customers. Oh. We did a raffle or whatever, but it was a free raffle or something like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know why. I don't understand why we don't host a bowl game. It just doesn't make sense to me. We have this. It's like the 3rd largest stadium in the country.
Yeah, so for the longest time, like it was us, and then
Michigan.
Yeah, Michigan expanded theirs.
Right, and then like the last 2 Neyland renovations have actually reduced capacity but added luxury.
Oh man, like I said, we're
still 100,000 plus.
We've never been. I mean, at this point, some of the bowl games are just kind of a little bit of a tradition. Like the Cotton Bowl gets played here, and the Orange Bowl gets played here. Like,
right.
We've just never been in that mix. As far
I just think we need to. Somebody just needs to be like, we're going to do the Volunteer Bowl.
Well, talk to the Haslam, like the Pilot Bowl.
There you go. The Casey Bowl. The Pet Safe Park Bowl.
Yeah.
Like there's enough big money here that we could.
Regal Bowl.
Yeah. I don't know. Regal's falling apart, but. They got bought by like a South African country or something like that.
HGTV Bowl, Discovery Bowl,
the
Scripps Bowl,
the Seal Holding Bowl, the Threads Bowl.
Yeah, that's right.
The Yeehaw Bowl, because Yeehaw is the only beer around here that does any sort of stuff like that.
Yeah,
which sucks.
There's a way. Ashley Capps Bowl. He's got the money.
I didn't get a hold of him.
Bonnaroo Bowl.
I've been trying to get him on the show for like a year and a half now.
I thought he agreed to one.
We never got scheduled. He said he's willing to do it. I just can't get him scheduled.
Gotcha. Like
last time I caught like a couple weeks ago. I was like, hey man, when do you want to do a show? I'd really love to talk to you or whatever. I'd like to do whatever. He's like, well, I'm in Greece right now, or Malta or something like that. And it's like, oh my bad, sir. Hope you're having a great time in fucking Malta.
When you get back stateside for more than a few days.
Yeah, and then a couple times before that, I reached out and he was in California with a bunch of meetings and stuff like that. But I want to talk to him about like, where do you like? I don't have any intent to get into the business like that, but like, how do you get started in something like this, and how did you get to be what is? I mean, you are one like, arguably the best or second best festival promoter in the country. Was it Coachella?
I think they sold their rights to it. I'm not sure.
Coachella and Bonnaroo are like
I think Live Nation essentially kind of. I'm pretty sure Live Nation took over Coachella, and I think Live Nation may have taken over.
I'd like to talk to him about that too. I don't know how much he knows about that. Have you heard any of the antitrust stuff going along with them? Live Nation, Ticketmaster? Because Live Nation bought Ticketmaster like a decade ago.
Huh.
And so, theoretically, I mean, Live Nation as a core business is a promoter. They say, hey, venue, we'd like to put a concert on in your venue. Hey, artist, we'd like to put you in this venue. That's what a promoter does. And they put all the pieces together. They hire the security. They make sure there's event staff and all the different stuff. And so apparently what they've been doing, which is fucking gross, and it goes back to what we were talking about when I stopped by the shop earlier about some of these weird, how are these businesses getting away with certain things? And this one goes to it's just full-on monopoly issue, where Live Nation is outright telling venues, if you book outside of us, you will never book with us again. So if you're a part-time venue, like if you're like a wedding venue or just an event space that sometimes you hold concerts, and sometimes you hold weddings and other events.
Right.
That's not that big a deal. But if you're a Tennessee Theater or a Bijou,
right,
and you're like, hey, the city of Knoxville, who owns the building, wants to do an event here, we're going to handle that event for them. And the rule from Live Nation is, no, we handle that event or you don't get any events from us. That's fucking crazy. And I'd be curious, if Ashley's willing to talk about it, I'd be curious to talk to him about his dealings with that, because he's had to run into it.
Right.
Because he represents a bunch of different venues, or he has relationships with a bunch of venues and a bunch of artists and all that kind of stuff. And where he sits and where he's been in that process, because it's fucking crazy.
Yeah.
Because then the other part of it too, it's like, okay, well,
it's one of those like blink games. It's like, who's going to blink first?
Well, but
it's
the other
like,
one,
are you going to tell Live Nation like, no, we want to be able to book other people. At Live Nation, I mean, they may, or I guess depending on how they were doing at that moment, as far as where they're at, as far as like having to reserve spaces. I'm assuming there's a cost to reserve that space for a certain period of time for them to book a group to come in there in that time frame.
But again, the other one too, though, is like apparently since Live Nation bought Ticketmaster, even if you have permission from Live Nation to book outside of, they're obligating that it goes through Ticketmaster for ticket sales, so that they can then collect fees.
Right.
Which is the gross. Like I've heard it from a bunch of different people. Rogan and some of his comedian friends have talked about it, about how much of a pain in the dick it is to have to deal with Ticketmaster, and how it's like we're selling tickets at $45 a ticket, and by the time it actually gets in your hand as a guest of the show, it's like $80.
Yeah.
And it's like, of that $45 ticket sale, as the artist, I'm only getting like $15 anyway. And so you're telling me I'm getting $15 and you're charging $20, $30, $40 in fees, and I'm only getting $15 of the original $45 in the first place?
Right.
And it's like, it's not a selfish thing. It's like, I'm only taking $15 because I want to keep that ticket price low for my audience.
Right.
You're going to make it so like I take $0 and sell $30 tickets, and you're still going to be $55, $60. That's not cheap for normal people to go out to a show. Nobody goes by themselves. You buy a ticket for you and your your plus one, or a group of people gets the tickets or whatever. It's like, it's a lot of money. But that's it. There's no other options. Like, unless you're going directly to the box office of the venue,
right,
who doesn't have the infrastructure.
It sounds like Live Nation is trying to cut that out.
Right. And doesn't have the infrastructure to make it as quick and easy as Ticketmaster does. It's a hard spot to be put in as a venue.
Right.
Or an artist for that matter, because the other side too is the artists are getting a very small percentage of. I mean, it's like these people don't come if I don't come.
Yeah. Been watching a bunch of Lewis Black, or I guess a lot of his stuff. Like I guess like part of that or part of his show, like he'll read off like comments that have been sent to him.
Uh-huh.
And sometimes it's like people that are like, I paid $150 for a ticket. Like, what the fuck's going on? And he was like, I'm with you. Like, why the fuck would you pay $150 to see me?
Yeah, that's funny. But I mean, it's so...
and some of it's just like the Live Nation. Like when I got on there looking for like hockey tickets, like some of those are like resellable. Like people that have already bought the tickets and they're trying to resell it, but it's still like quote unquote verified resellers on the Ticketmaster site.
Right. And you're paying like $20 in fees.
Right.
Plus whatever the price is that person's asking for.
Yeah, and that jacked up price basically because they've already got it reserved. So you're not paying like the original, just straight what would be the quote unquote box office price.
Right. Yeah. It's a problem.
I mean, that's the one thing with demand. I mean, if there's a handful of tickets
right, I get that part.
you can
right.
automatically jack that shit up.
I get that part as I
paid it for the one show we went to in Asheville. I paid like out the nose, and I'm like, saw the fucking scalpers like out there, like $50. And I'm like, motherfucker, I paid like 3 times that much for
what
that.
What show in Asheville?
Cigarettes.
Oh, gotcha. It's a weird venue. I know we've talked about it on here before.
I liked it.
It's a good show. It's a good time. It's just a weird venue.
It was smaller, like definitely theater. I enjoyed like the comfortable seats to like just like sit down and actually enjoy it.
They did have cushy butts. They had very cushy butts. But yeah, so anyway, there's apparently...
It's kind of similar to what we have here, where they have a civic auditorium that's like more of like a flat ground, or we were in the More Civic Auditorium.
Right.
But I've been to a show in Asheville in that same building that was the Civic Coliseum.
Right.
Had a more like flat floor where you had more of a floor space.
Yeah.
To where the Wonder Run was more direct, almost like a larger movie theater.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't know what it was. I'm curious what that building was. Because what was weird to me is that...
I think it's like their civic center, basically.
Right, but it was converted. Like, it was clearly converted. Because it was stadium seating. It wasn't flat. Like, as row 1 was on the floor. And by the time you got to row, 30, you were 10 feet, 15 feet up in the air.
Yeah.
But if you noticed, if you looked to the left or right to the side of the room, there were archways that went out to the concourse. And they'd close the archways off, but at we were in row 20 or whatever. Oh. When you look over there, you could see half of the archway.
Yeah, I don't remember.
And so they'd built the floor up where it used to have been flat. And so it was just weird because you had this archway that was clearly like a 10-foot archway because they went all the way down both sides of the room. But when you looked over on our row, it was only 3 feet of archway left from the raised floor.
I can vaguely picture it. I like the venue we went to in Atlanta to see. Who was that? Remy Zero.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of like the Bijou, I guess.
Kind of, but they had areas where they had tables set up. So I guess where there are times where they have a comedy show or whatever. You have I
mean, it's a Mill and Mine. That's a better one. That's their version of Mill and Mine, except.
I mean, this had tables to where you could have food and shit and be eating at it and have a dinner show basically.
Well, my Mill and Mine has that. It's just they don't have their tables out in the room when they have a concert event on.
Yeah.
They either take them upstairs on that little balcony thing, or they take them out in the yard or whatever it is. They have storage for their stuff. Where
I've only been in there once.
Was it the Roxy? Is that where we went? No, I saw.
No, it wasn't the Roxy.
I saw Silverchair at the Roxy.
I want to say NoFX was playing at the Roxy that night because I think I remember driving by and I was like, "Holy shit! The NoFX is playing tonight." I don't think I've ever really listened to NoFX.
I'm not a huge fan. I got a couple songs I like.
I'm like, "Oh shit! NoFX is playing tonight."
Don't call me white. Don't
hey,
call.
We still need to find
white.
a place to park to go to wherever that venue was.
Remy Zero was an interesting band.
Still like him.
I'm not mad at him. I still listen to it every once in a while. Got some. John, was it Dave? Corker.
John Cocker?
Cocker, yeah. I was watching a movie.
Dave Cocker? No. John. No, Joe Cocker.
Joe Cocker. There you go.
Yeah.
We figured it out. There he is. Yeah, I got that song. There was
spasming.
Yeah, there was a rendition of
raspy voice
of that one song of his. That was the outro to a movie we watched the other day, and I was like, "That's a fucking good song. I need to get that one."
Oh, the intro to The Wonder Years?
No, that's
Give with the help of our friends. Yeah,
that's a good one of his too. Don't get me wrong, but
yeah.
I can play 2 seconds of it so we don't get fined.
Okay, pause it.
I'm feeling home.
Yeah, I got on Facebook the other day, and I kind of looked on our thing, and there was something about copyright issues with a number of different random episodes, and I didn't know if that was actual a copyright issue or if it was just some kind of weird notification.
In the back of the house, in our notifications is.
Right. Yeah,
I haven't seen that. I don't pay that much attention. I don't do as much on the Facebook page as I used to. I try to change over.
My phone's been fucking up on it, so I'm like,
when I pick a fight with random either elected officials or other political persons, I try to change to the Almost Agreement account instead of my own.
Thank you for that.
Well, I mean, I'm only aware of their existence because of the show. So, Mr. Hornbeck was reporting that the Knox County School Board was discussing offloading maintenance and janitorial to a third party. And apparently there's a bunch of stink about it, and they've taken it off the commission, since it's a budgetary item, the commission would have to look at it. And it had been submitted to the commission agenda and has been taken off. Presumably because people are like, no, you're not doing that. But I don't know. We'll have to see.
I can see pluses and minuses to both sides of it. It could save them money in the long run, but at the same time, you would also have, as far as a security issue, you've got possibly more like random temporary people coming in to do your stuff.
Right. Well, I mean, you take the number one A thing you're doing, and why it would save money is that you're taking county employees and making them non-municipal employees. Because
I think that necessitates a lower cost.
It is very likely to make it a lower cost because the obligations that the county or that municipalities have to their employees versus the private sector are different.
I guess in the general cost of it, possibly.
There's pension requirements, and there's a bunch of different requirements that the municipalities have for their employees that a private company would not necessarily have to have.
It's probably why the University of Tennessee outsources a lot of its food service jobs.
I mean, it goes, okay, so we were talking earlier today about the train thing, right?
Okay.
Right, and so it goes to me, this is one of the things that I conflict with myself on a lot. Like, I get torn up inside because I can't quite put my finger on where I feel like what is the right move on this thing. I certainly don't like the way it's going, but you had the railroad companies and the railroad companies and labor have been going back and forth for the last year or so, trying to settle some issues. The major issues being pay time off. It's not a bottom line money issue. It's a
guaranteed.
We're
time
working
off.
30 days. We're working 30 days a month, and we can't call in for any reason, anytime. To the point of I have COVID right now, and when I call you and say, "Hey, I just tested positive for COVID," you're like, you're either coming to work or you're getting fired.
Yeah.
Now, COVID's I don't know. I just made an example off the top of my head, but essentially that is the gist that's being played by the labor side of the argument. Now, that in and of itself, I take a pause with. It's like I don't know,
but I would also take pause in how many people are actually working 30 days with 2 days off or whatever.
Right, that's a good question. I don't know. I don't know the specifics, but there's a lot of people.
Is this a general average, or is this possibly people that are just they don't have a wife and kids, and they're like, hey,
or they do, and they're broke as shit, and they want to work. They know they need to work to pay the bills, which should still brings up the main bottom line issue.
Our friend Brandon was in here not earlier, was basically saying he has the option whenever he's out there on the river working, that I guess it's pretty much, or at times it's up to him to put in a request for time off if he wants to get off the boat, basically.
Right.
It's like, hey, you're going to be in this port this time.
Right, because you're on the boat.
Do you want to go into another boat, or put in for time off? If you don't put in for time off, I think you would still kind of schedule hey, I want to go back down this way, or I want to go that way.
But if you don't say anything otherwise, we're assuming you're going with the boat to wherever the boat goes.
Right. Kind of.
And continuously until further notice.
Hey, I want 2 weeks off.
Right. Which I'd assume not.
So where you have that flexibility of an option, but it sounds like in the railroad, they're more hey, you've got to work this.
Well, plus, I mean,
which makes me seem kind of reluctant to how many people are actually
right. I think
it seems kind of out of the normal that you've got to be required to work for 24 whatever days straight.
I don't
without specifically requesting a day off.
That's a fair point, but I would think it's similar.
You just need to be available for these days.
But I would think it's not dissimilar to the boat issue in that, well, I need to have next Tuesday off, but you're putting me on a train from, I don't know, Denver, and
I think that's where part of it is it's with some of the people that are in ambulatory or even police care or law enforcement, other kind of quote unquote essential services. To where sometimes they'll schedule you your day off, but you still need to be semi-available.
Right.
It's hey, you got a day off, but you're on an
on-call status of some sort.
And on call, basically.
Yeah. But okay, so back it up a little bit. I think there's a couple things to unpack on just the train part of it. I don't disagree with you that it's very unclear to me from what I've heard that whether this is a required, everybody works 30 straight, or some do, some don't, or there's a Corona in there, at least on the door, too. On the top of the door. There we go. The bottom line here, I guess, to me, is that you have a body of of employees that say, hey, this is not working for us. And the boss is saying, well, too fucking bad. And since it falls under that essential services category, there is a law on the books. It's the U.S. Railroad something or other Act from the 70s or some shit like that, which basically says you're so important that you can't strike. Or the rephrase that it's not that you can't strike, but that Congress can get involved and make it so that you can't strike, which is what has essentially just happened today or yesterday. Yeah. At least it passed in the House on the boss's side of the negotiation that says...
They get passed on the Senate side today as well.
Did it? It's now illegal for railroad workers to strike.
So it has to be signed by Biden.
But assuming that part goes through, it is illegal to strike from your job when you have a union. Right. And it's like, I am not a union person. I'm not a fan of unions. But the idea that a legislative body can overthrow a democratic process by employees is fucking crazy to me, especially given the makeup of our current legislative bodies. But even in the grand scheme of things, I understand the premise, the idea of saying this is such a important part of our infrastructure that we need to make sure it's running. Well, then the obligation of government, if they're going to intercede on this, should be to protect the labor in it, not the fucking bosses in it.
And that's one thing I found kind of interesting in one of the little small stories I read about it, as far as I think they mentioned like Marco Rubio and
a couple
Ted
of Republicans
Cruz
are on board.
People kind of pushing against the government, I guess stepping in on it.
Right, which Marco Rubio and Ted Cruz even,
where they were no, the government shouldn't be able to tell businesses how they should do their stuff.
Yeah, which I mean is theoretically a Republican ideal, but the Republicans hate labor unions, so
right.
It's a weird middle issue for. I mean, for Ted Cruz and Marco Rubio, it's whatever the Democrats say, I'm going against, and I will make the argument, even though I've made the exact opposite argument in previous incantation or
right. That's also I remember. I'm trying to remember exactly, kind of the rhetoric that had been said before to make a better
right. Essentially,
juxtaposition.
Essentially, this is the United States Congress, Senate, and potentially the White House are siding with the railroad bosses, saying that this job is important. We can't let these people strike. And instead of saying we can't let these people strike, bosses, make your employees happy so they don't strike. They're saying, employees, if you strike, it's a crime.
Yeah. I think that's what was it. It's like that you essentially had these hardcore Republicans that were siding with labor unions, and it's like, no. Like we can't let this happen.
Well, because I mean, the other side too. I think if the Biden administration had gone the other way, and the House and Senate had voted the other way and said, okay, well, we're going to go extremely hard towards the labor's wants in this thing and trying to defend labor, Marco Rubio and Ted Cruz would be saying, you can't tell private industry how to work, how to operate their business.
Right. I think that was more how I was kind of thinking of it, and I think I got it backwards.
No, I think you got it correct. Marco Rubio and Ted Cruz and the couple other Republicans that are for this are posturing it as we're siding with labor on this because they went through the process and did the thing and blah 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 blah.
Well, no, I think they were against it.
They're against what the House has settled on. Yes.
Yeah. No, that's what it was. Like they were pushing for we need to give them more sick days and time days off.
Right.
We need to listen to the unions.
Right.
Like we're not supporting the unions.
Right.
That's what it was.
But I think that's because the Democrats did the opposite, and that's why they're saying those things. Had the Democrats done the opposite and said, "We're gonna force 7 days paid. We're gonna do everything labor's asking."
Right.
Marco Rubio's and Ted Cruz's would be, "You can't tell private companies how to work.
Right.
That's inappropriate."
Okay. Sorry. I appreciate you proving the point that I was trying to make.
Right. They're going to do what they're going to do. They're literally going to do the opposite of what the Democrats are doing.
Right.
And I think that's part of the problem with the two-party bullshit because it's points.
Yeah. Sometimes it's making the other side look bad.
I said the bad guy did it wrong. Vote for me.
Right. Right.
And I'm going to prove to you that they're the bad guy, even though they're doing exactly what I would have done in their position. But since I'm not in that position, they're wrong.
Right.
And that's the argument. I mean, that's literally the argument that the Ted Cruzes and shit of the world are making right now. But to me, the bigger thing to me is that, again, I'm not a labor fan. I'm not a big fan of unions. I don't necessarily like what they do in the grand scheme of things. But the idea that the unions and the unions with the backing of the employees went to management and said, hey, this isn't working. We got to figure out a solution. Went back and forth. Management came back with a solution that was middle ground. And the union said, maybe. Some of the smaller unions said yes. Bigger unions, it went out and actually had a physical vote by union members, employees, who said, no, this isn't enough. To which the bosses said, well, fuck you then. And the union said, okay, then we're going to go on strike. And then the federal government steps in and says, we're going to the original plan the unions put up. Or the original plan that the
right, but I don't think
management put up that does not even include the middle ground concession.
But I don't think it requires a hard plan agreement. I think it's still like a temporary, basically, like agreement
between
the unions and I guess like the owners.
That's right, but it is legally enforcing a temporary agreement.
It's legally enforcing, but at the same time, it's not a permanent solution for it.
No, but it's legally enforcing a temporary one that is
it's legally
only good
enforcing them being unable to, I guess, quote unquote, being unable to strike.
Right. They can only quit.
Yeah.
Which again, to me, is a semantics argument.
But I mean, it's not requiring the unions or the railroad owning companies to abide by this thing 100%. This agreement 100% for now and forever. It's
right. It's for now. It's for now, just not forever.
It's temporary. It's
right.
like, hey, sorry, you guys can't shut down right now. We're going to go back to what most of you agreed upon a few months ago. We're going to go with that to try to make everyone a little bit happier.
But my point is
versus
that
just we're going to shut everything down.
My point is that most of you agreed upon was never true. Because that's not where they're going. They're going to that one, which is essentially status quo. That's what my understanding of it is. What the House passed is status quo, or maybe +1, going from 0 paid days off to 1 is what got passed. I know what they're asking for is like 7, which was a separate bill, and it's fucking weird the way the process works. But either way, it's a weirdism. Like you should be able to
it's a weird thing ism in like the American kind of, I guess, like time off perspective compared to like most other countries that are on the same quote unquote level that we are. Like it's unheard of that you don't get 2 to 3 weeks paid time off.
Well, what's weird, see, there's part of the back of my head that I hate the idea of paid time off. I think it's weird, but to prove your point, to agree with you, is like when we were starting to shift to the 4-day work week for you guys, because I'd been listening to one of my podcasts that talks about labor and all this kind of different shit. And I was like, and then thinking personally about my day job and how I would rather do a 4-day work week than a 5-day work week and how that would work for me personally. Like, it was weird. Like, it was confusing, maybe not to you personally, but to the rest of the staff. Like, it was like, I don't get it.
Like, it's totally like out of our like purview.
Right.
Like,
this doesn't make sense.
We had no concept of this. Like, what are you talking about?
I can have 3 days off a week.
Right.
But I need to work like 35, 40 hours a week. It's like, yeah, you're still going to do that. Yeah. I don't understand. You're going to work 4 9s instead of 5 7.5s.
Right.
I don't understand. That's so confusing. It's like, I don't know how else to explain it, but I think you will like this. No, I want to make. And we kind of had to force it on some of you guys.
But am I getting paid less?
Right.
No, you're not getting paid less.
But I'm just saying, like, we had to force it on you guys because, like, it was confusing. Like, it didn't make sense because you.
Right. It's out of our concept.
Right.
Yeah.
You are so used to the idea of you work 5 8-hour shifts a week.
Right.
That's how you live.
Right.
And I was like, no, fuck that. Let's do it. And I mean, it's costed us a bunch of money. Like, we don't need to do it. It's a waste of money for us to do it for you guys.
Yeah.
But
I've definitely mentioned it at the shop we're at. As far as like the overflow, and I'm like,
but it's investment.
I sat there for a good like 2 or 3 hours tonight, just like twiddling my thumbs, and I'm like,
I mean, it's
like,
an investment.
Should I?
It's an investment we want to make.
Boss and be like, can I just go and go home? Like, I'm wasting man hours.
It's an investment that we want to make in you, the staff, as well as the business at large.
Right.
Because as we grow, it's going to become less wasteful time spent.
True.
We can use that time for other stuff. I would like some peripheral activities to be taking place during some of the dead time. But for your store specifically, it's a hard overlap. It really doesn't need to happen. I've floated the idea now of perhaps doing a 6 a.m. open at that store with free coffee. I'm thinking about it.
Okay.
It's a thought I've had.
It could take a build up, but maybe possible.
But I mean, just getting that morning, like just getting a bunch of people stopping on their way to work, getting their free coffee.
Right.
Like the idea would be it'd be free coffee, but it's no to go cups. Like you either bring your own cup. You either bring your own cup if you want to take it with you, or we have just regular standard coffee mugs, and you hang out and drink your coffee with us. And while you're hanging out, you get to see the products we sell and what we do. And
all right.
I like it.
Yeah, it wouldn't work. I don't think so.
I mean, bring your own, and then bring your own. We're being eco-friendly. We're doing zero waste, zero landfill in our.
I mean, I could see it's like a lower cost if you're bringing your own cup, and then like a 50-cent charge if you want to use one of our cups, like most places do. That take advantage of people that want coffee in the morning.
Our cups are free. You just don't get to take
your
them
own
with you.
cup. It's a refill. If you want to use one of our Casey cups.
No, see, but the point is to hold you there for a while. Like that's the trade off. I'm giving you free coffee, but the trade off is you have to hang out with me for a minute.
Right.
I'm paying for your time with free coffee. I don't know. It's a thought I had. Anyway, okay. Point is, going back to the labor part of it, yeah. The point is that if we collectively agree that the rail infrastructure moving smoothly is of utmost economic importance to this nation, then we should absolutely take labor's side of the argument. Like it should be. It doesn't.
I think that's the safer route, definitely.
Because if you're that important, you should get fucking paid.
I mean, especially in the
why do doctors get paid so much? Because they're that important. I disagree with that. I've also
with that. The supply chain essentially, like, still to an extent, kind of teetering on a knife, basically.
Right. I mean, this would throw off a whole bunch of shit that's been already fucked up as the last couple of years, anyway.
Right.
But my point is that. You know, because I think it goes back to what was exposed during the pandemic. The idea of essential worker, which is fucking ridiculous on a governmental standpoint in the first place. The idea that a governor of a state can pick and choose which jobs are essential and not is kind of ridiculous in and of itself.
I mean, it's not a bad classification to try to hash out.
Well, I think
in the event of what we were in was a nationwide pandemic.
Well, one, I think it's just a poor use of English. Because what that says is essential to us, right. Not essential to you as the individual. Your individualism doesn't fucking matter because you're in this industry.
It does add into that general kind of vagueness of it.
But to me, so if we're going to talk about like, you know, that this industry is of national security importance or on a state level, this is for state security. That's where you get police and fire being essential,
right?
Or whether it's economically essential. Being a separate category or something like that.
Right.
But it's demeaning to anybody. If you're out there fucking working, it's essential to you to work. That's how you pay your bills. That's how you live your life. The idea that your job is not essential just because, nobody dies if I don't go to work.
Right. It adds into that vagueness of people that, thought their job was inconsequential. They're like, hey, I work at a gas station, but people are coming here every day to buy gas.
Right, they get their coffee. Their day doesn't exist without me. Yeah, it probably does. But at some level, it is essential to the community at large that places like yours exist and jobs like yours exist.
In that, exact point of it being a gas station, it's like, okay, yeah, you are providing an essential service as far as providing gas, but outside of that, it's like how many people rely upon you to have coffee, have snacks,
right,
chips, a little cafe to buy a sandwich or whatever. Is that essential? But their main thing of being categorized as essential is we provide gasoline. Like we're literally what's getting people from point A to point B.
Right. But if you don't have if you're not
right.
if the majority of the people aren't out there doing things, you don't need what's essential about gasoline if people aren't moving around because they're not supposed to.
People are still moving around.
Right, but the argument, the main argument being is like, well, if you're essential, you should be well compensated for your essentialness. To me, I mean, I don't disagree with that premise. I think there's two factors.
I think it helps some people to a benefit and also to a detriment in some cases of being classified as essential. Is it some people didn't realize how quote unquote essential they really were, and other people were like, oh well. We're a donut shop, like we're essential. I
mean, the way they classified in the state of Tennessee made it pretty easy to be essential if you wanted to be. But
right.
I think the other side, though, too,
that's where it gets into the vagueness of the quote unquote essential.
Right.
Like, are you really essential, or can you just barely by the skin of your teeth categorize yourself as essential?
But I think the idea being,
I make. I do donuts, and that's essential to people for breakfast.
I'm classified as a food.
Your carbohydrates, yeah.
I'm classified as a food, and food service is essential.
Right.
But I mean, because one of the things that kind of came out in the process is like, well, grocery workers, and like, I mean, they still do it. Like, Kroger's and Food City both put a set of staff T-shirts out that was Frontline Heroes or whatever. Like it was like, we're frontline heroes, we're essential heroes, or it's like kind of this weird.
And if they stuck it out through the whole thing, by all means,
I don't know
for that.
But I mean, I don't know. I guess the point I'm trying to get to is that there's an essential there's an essential need for grocery stores. We have to be able to get our food. That makes sense.
Right.
But the idea of being a grocery worker, being essential, yes, the entity that you work for is essential. But I don't like where I'm advocating for the railroad workers to get the pay and the labor things that they want because of the essential nature that I think that the railroad industry is versus that same essential conversation about a grocery store. I don't think being a grocery store employee is nearly as essential as being, but it's a skill based argument more than it is
because there are those different positions within that grocery store and also the railroad industry.
I mean, I think as like for the grocery store, you can do away with all the GMs.
You're trading your cars out, and like you're the one like connecting different cars to different cars. Whatever. Right. Or you're the one like organizing.
The train doesn't move if you don't do the thing.
Hey, this is coming in here. We need to get these cars together and these cars together. We need to get this thing going this way on this track. Blah blah blah.
We're on the bump yard.
But at the same time, in the grocery store industry, you've got those people that are receiving those goods coming in.
Right, but you still got the guy out there
that are putting it, and you got the people that are picking it, and the people that are also
right. But you still got the guy out there that's taking the Oreos off the truck and putting them on the shelf, and we're counting Oreos as essential too. That's kind of the joke part of it. But I get, I don't know. We got way sideways on what I was trying to get to.
But I mean, even in the grocery store aspect, how many? I mean, I guess you've got chips of a third party supplier that is stocking that, but I would say for the most part of their store, at least 75% of what's going on the shelf is being done by their employees and not third-party vendors.
Absolutely not. No. Third-party vendors are doing the majority. Maybe not, I would say at least 50%.
So you got chips and stuff, you've got beer and alcohol. What else we got?
All the sodas. Okay. Most of your frozen. Realistically, if it isn't
frozen,
all your ice creams, all your pizzas that aren't Kroger brand pizzas,
so third party stocked and everything, just
Red Baron, DiGiorno, they've all got people that go around and do their thing. It's actually the same company, but half the coffees, some of the coffees are, some of the coffees are. Gatorade's a weird one, even though it's a Pepsi product. It's a weird, like some of the Gatorade products are not through Pepsi Knoxville. Some of them are through Kroger's commissary. And so depending on which very particular Red Bull or Gatorade it is, Red Bull is another one. all your dairy that isn't, again, if it's Kroger branded or if it's house branded, if it's Kroger or Food City brands, then they're putting it up for the most part. There's some exceptions to that, but for the most part. But like all your dairy, Mayfield goes out, they do their own shit. Broden's, what is it? Is that right? Broden's Dairy Products? Borden, whatever it is.
Borden, yeah, I think.
Yeah, but what's the yellow carton?
So I mean, I would still at least half.
Mayfield's.
I mean, you definitely ticked off some major sections of the grocery store. Yeah,
all the bread.
But I would still say
all the tortillas.
I would still say at least half of the product they have in that store
is in-house.
Right. Which isn't a large percentage, but...
Right. And I mean, my day job was deemed essential too, right. And I'm putting beer on the shelf.
Right.
And I got documentation from the Homeland Security saying that I had a piece of paper that says I am like, that they're like, put this in your car. It's like, what? They're like, print this off. They emailed it to me.
Just in case.
Print it off and put it in your car. It's like, what are you talking about? It's like, apparently it happened somewhere, obviously, not locally, but it happened somewhere that people were being stopped and detained and asked why they were out and about when they weren't supposed to be. And if I were to have that situation, I were to hand the officer, here, officer, this is the reason I'm out in public.
Right. Yeah. Other states had different things.
Right.
We didn't really do it much here.
Right. But that's what legal told our managers to tell us when they gave us our forms.
I think we had like a 2 or 3 week span that.
15 days. 15 days to stop the curve or whatever. I would love to do a show where we try to recap the pandemic. Not tonight.
Definitely not tonight.
No, I don't know. There's so many things that make me feel crazy. We don't have to go on that pandemic. Like, I literally feel crazy about a lot of shit nowadays. And I don't know if it's like I'm on some like higher plane of consciousness where I understand things, or I'm legitimately crazy. Because I could go back to last week and we were talking about the Knox County Sheriff's Office thing. So McAlisters this was the continuation of the story I wanted to add. McAlisters has fired the girl. And they said in their press release on firing her it was an age issue. Because she was 15. Which in the state of Tennessee you can work at 14 with parent permission and blah, blah, blah. There's a whole bunch of fucking bullshit with it.
But you can't work past 8 p.m. or whatever.
Right. Yeah. When school's in session, you can't work during school hours or past 7 or 8 p.m. or whatever. This was a Monday evening, I guess, that this went down or whatever. So, like, at least to the public's understanding, she's never broken that. She never violated that rule, and if she did, it would have been at the knowledge of McAlisters. Right. So there's one thing that I was just thinking about that just kind of popped in my head right now. It's like that's how hard up food service is right now for employees. Because all the jobs I've ever had where I've dealt with hiring people and stuff like that, we never wanted to hire 15-year-olds. Not because they couldn't be good employees or anything like that, but because the restrictive nature of them being under 16 made a bunch of rules in place that we had to keep check on. There was more paperwork to deal with that employee. So it was something you avoided. So McAlisters was in a position where they needed employees bad enough that they were going to deal with a high-maintenance employee. Not that she was a problem just because she was 15. It was a high-maintenance employee. That they were willing to deal with that issue until this event. And they're still dealing with that issue. I guarantee you that they have plenty more 15-year-olds that are working for them right now that they're not firing. Guarantee it. I would.
It's a weird story. They may have preemptively PR, just tried to fire her.
Oh, that's all it is. It's absolutely it's PR. Enough people went, fuck you, McAlisters. I back the blue. I'm never buying shit from you again.
No, we let her go.
Well, we let her go. So if that's the reason, come back to being a customer. Which I'm not even going to really fault McAlisters for it in the grand scheme of things. Right. Again, to me, this every bit of the issue that is this issue lays at the feet of the sheriff's office. Every bit of it. There's no excuse. There's no logical excuse. And again, like I said last week, like even if she did the worst possible, which obviously she didn't, because if I were McAlisters, that would be my excuse for firing her. You know what I'm saying? Like, if she did the worst thing you could do, which is like, fuck you, I hate you fucking pigs, I'm not serving you fucking pig-ass bacon bullshit, and walked away, if I'm McAlisters and she did that, that is why I fired her.
Right.
And then it's easy.
Right.
But no, they make up some bullshit. She was only 15. It was, we were having a hard time keeping up with her schedule requirements, stuff like that.
At this point, once her mother has now gotten a lawyer,
her mother already had the lawyer.
They've tightened up the ship that much more.
I would
so they don't want to get sued for
I'd already be suing.
Illegal grounds for firing. So they're like, "Hey, well, we're firing her because of this cause." But that's what I told you before. Like, there's many reasons that you can fire people. Like,
right, where it's lawsuit free. But that proves my point, though. It proves a point that there is at least no evidence that she really did anything to these cops.
Right, but it's
because if there was
illusion of it that makes people just like, oh, well, I think that could have happened because of that reason.
Right, but if that was, then that's their excuse to firing her, which is lawsuit free. If I'm McAlisters, that's the why I want to fire her. I want to be able to say, hey, look, she did this thing which is absolutely against policy, which was being rude and disrespectful to customers, regardless of what they are. That's why we fired her.
Right.
Because then I can't get sued for that. That's easy.
Right.
Which means to me, that there is no proof of that. That McAlisters can find no proof that she did any of that.
Right. That's where it turned into, well, she was 15 and her availability wasn't.
Right. Which is bullshit. I mean, it's just bullshit. I don't know how else to describe it. Like, it's so fucking childish bullshit out of the adults in the room. The child got punished for childish behavior of adults. It's, I don't even know. Like, it drives me crazy. Like, it's really irksome. Like, Sheriff Spangler needs to be like, hey, look.
That's the weird thing about the legal system is then they will find, like, the most, I don't want to say outlandish, but I mean, like, the grossest example of that particular point of a legislative law or whatever.
I have no idea what you're talking about. There's no...
So I mean, in that case, like, you can't fire someone except for in these certain circumstances.
I mean, we're in Tennessee. You can fire somebody
to where the company says, okay, we're firing because of these justifiable reasons for firing someone.
Right.
But then the mother's lawyer said, she only did this, or this.
Well, but I mean,
are a totally different classification as far as, justifiable release of an employee.
Well, to me, the only reason you...
So it's basically both sides just trying to fight for their version of the law in general.
I still don't quite follow what you're getting at. Other than to say, like, okay, so I understand McAlisters is trying to protect their own interests and trying to save face and trying to save themselves from lawsuit.
Yeah.
But and I understand that the family who was already litigative in the sense that they're suing the city right now for the KPD actions and killing Anthony Thomas Jr.
Oh, are they?
Thompson Jr. Excuse me. Yeah, there are. That is the lawyer. The lawyer is the one that is filing suit on the family's behalf against the KPD in the city of Knoxville for what happened at Austin East.
Didn't know there was an ongoing investigation.
Right. That lawsuit's already in action.
Gotcha.
And that lawyer is the one that's making the public statement saying, hey, this girl did none of that. And this is the sheriff's office just being dicks.
Gotcha.
Which, again, lends to me,
right.
And I'm not 100, I still don't, like, I'm not fully on board with it, but lends to me to say that there's a possibility that this was an intentional action on the sheriff's office to fuck with this girl.
That's slim possibility.
Yeah. Because again, like, to me, like, if she did anything, that would be the excuse McAlisters gives to fire her.
Right.
If you have any proof of that at all through the
but it's hard to prove that. I mean, you could assume that maybe if it went to a jury trial and you've had people, you could maybe convince them that, like, hey, this was the sibling of a person that was killed by the Knox County Sheriff's Department or whatever.
The city of Knoxville.
City of Knoxville, whatever. But, that there was an underlying issue there that could maybe considered upon this.
But what jury? What are we in front of the jury for? For the lawsuit?
Provable, it's provable class action lawsuit for...
Wrongful termination?
Yeah, I guess.
Okay, so the family brings a wrongful termination suit. Right. And they want to avoid that.
I think in civil, you're not guaranteed, but I think in criminal, you are guaranteed a jury trial.
No, in civil, you're guaranteed if there's grounds for. If a judge agrees there's grounds for, you can take a
You sure?
Yeah. If you refuse to settle, and a judge agrees that there's grounds for litigation, then yeah, you're guaranteed a jury of your civil suit.
I know as far as between civil and criminal, like the civil, the jury is actually able to take into consideration your if you decide to plead the fifth. The jury is actually able to take into consideration
and in a civil suit.
Your consideration for pleading the fifth is a semi-admission of guilt. It's like, hey,
and a civil suit is also allowed to
talk about this. Yeah,
a civil suit is also allowed to say, okay, this isn't a guilty or innocent. This isn't a or B answer. A jury in a civil suit's allowed to say, okay, well, we can go past what the plaintiff is asking for. You know, so if I'm suing you for $1 million and it's some egregious thing and whatever, I can take that to the jury. The jury can go, well, he owes you $10 or he owes you $10 million. Oh. They can go anywhere in that. They're not obligated to just the options given as far as the A, B of the defense and the whatever. They can spread past that. But again, I don't know. I just think I think there's. I
mean, I think there's ground. That's the beauty and the ugliness of the legal system itself, as in it can come down to the argument that the defense and the prosecutors can make in that specific case.
But I think there's grounds for wrongful termination, even in a right-to-work state like Tennessee.
Right.
Because if it was an age issue, why wasn't it an age issue yesterday or 2 days ago?
As I said, that's where it comes down to where, in this case, where the company, the franchisee or whatever, came down to as far as their official reasons for termination.
Right, but which again,
that's the only thing that their lawyer can fight against is for, because that's where it all starts, is for their reason for termination.
Right.
If they're able to say a semi-justified reason for termination.
Right, I agree with you. But to me, that proves that there is no clear indication that she did anything wrong in the process of this interaction with these police officers. Because if she did, then that would be their grounds. Because that is an even easier position to take in the potential lawsuit, is that she broke policy by refusing to serve a customer because of their profession.
Right,
because they've been clear, it's not the policy of McAlisters to not serve officers. They've said that numerous times since the event.
I wonder if that would open up the case for, in a civil case, for defamation, essentially. Essentially, you fired me for doing something that
but you have the proof.
I obviously didn't do.
But that's what I'm saying. That's why they didn't do that, because they don't have proof of that.
Right.
If they had proof of that from the video or whatever, or testimony from the coworkers, if they had proof of that, then they would say, this is why we fired you, here's our proof.
Which would lend credence to the reasoning for their firing. If they had evidence to that, that's why they would fire them for that cause.
Which leads me to the assumption that they don't have that evidence, which means most likely her version of the story is the truth, not the police officers.
Right.
That's the point I'm trying to get to. The reality to me is that if McAlisters had proof of this, that's what would have been their reasoning for firing.
Right.
Since they didn't use that as their reasoning for firing, they fired her for this bullshit 15 thing, just to get her out of there to save face for the public, for the blue line special public out there that they want to keep as customers.
Right. And they think it's basically what they can win in court.
Right, and they think that's strong enough that they can avoid a lawsuit for wrongful termination.
Right.
And I think so. But again, in the take a step back, let's look at the big picture. What's happening in here? The clear, what seems clear to me in this story is that she did nothing wrong. A couple of cops got bent out of shape about some bullshit and got this girl fired. That's the very generic, small window version of what actually happened.
Very possible. It's hard to get down to the actual truth,
but
especially in cases like this.
But my point is, to me, everything that we're seeing and hearing as a reaction, everything that's happening, most specifically the reason for termination, that to me hammers it down to that this is just cops getting bent out of shape about bullshit, and that sucks, because these are county employees. These are we pay these people's salaries. And I know you hate when I say that phrase, but we pay their salaries. They exist because we allow them to exist. And are you okay with somebody that you allow to exist treating one of your neighbors like this? I'm not okay with this. There should be a bigger thing of this. Sheriff Spangler needs to put a task force or some bullshit together to investigate the situation and figure out how to move forward where some dumbassery like this doesn't happen again.
Yeah.
Because this is fucking bullshit. The coincidence of the family, second degree bullshit. But just on face value, without the family part of it, it's full on bullshit.
Right.
And the sheriff's office needs to do something about it to save face in the future. Because, I mean, it's so dumb because it's like, when I talked to Sheriff Spangler, not even election stuff, just talking about him, I was like, I'm a 40-year-old fucking white guy. And if a sheriff's deputy pulls up behind me, I'm freaking out. How do you fix that? I'm supposed to be the least scared of cops out there. And I'm still scared when I'm interacting with cops.
And their generic response would be like, well, you've got no reason to be worried,
Well,
if you haven't done anything wrong.
Well, I'm not a 15-year-old black girl, so I'm probably better off than she is, sure. But how do you fix that? And, he goes on his little standard bullshitty spiel about, it's about community engagement. It's about, letting people know we're here to help, we're not here to make your life harder. We're here to make your life better and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, well, explain to me how that line you gave me in an interview lines up with this situation right now. It doesn't. So either the culture isn't there, and that's not the culture you're building as a sheriff, or you just fucking bullshitted me on a show. Either one.
It's a mixture.
Probably, but you're not making it a priority, obviously. This should have been an opportunity to close the gap, not widen it.
Right.
If he would have been wise about what he was doing and not had Kimberly Gunn just fucking fired her on the spot for opening her mouth in the first place. But if he would have been wise in the situation, he would have gone there, talked to her specifically, talked to McAllister, and be like, hey, we screwed up. She didn't do anything wrong. Keep her here. And then he would have gone publicly and been like, hey, guys, it's just a little misunderstanding. It's not that big a deal. Keep coming into McAllister's. It's been great business for McAllister's, great PR for them, all this different stuff.
Which I think the sheriff's department did put that. They're like, we think this is they went to the extent of like, we don't think this is we think this is an isolated incident. This isn't McAllister's corporate or even
right. They protected
their
McAllister's. He went out and protected McAllister's.
Right.
He didn't protect her.
True.
There was no, hey, no, don't fire her. No. None of that.
Right.
That's what he should have been doing. If he wants to close gaps between the community and his office, then he should have been like, no, do not fire her. She did nothing wrong. My guys overreacted to something that shouldn't have been there.
Right.
They should be fired.
But I mean,
if anybody should have gotten fired, it should have been one or both or all three of those fucking officers.
Right. But
not that he can afford to lose any.
Was that just poor intelligence that went to him before he made that? Not trying to give him any kind of excuse, but
even if it was
that like 24 to 36 hours,
even if it was
outside of that incident,
the captain is responsible for the ship.
Right. I agree. Like, he should have made sure all his ducks were in a row before he put out a public statement upon what had already become an incident.
Then that's the point. That's the point, and especially you're an elected official,
right?
But you're also a lame duck elected official at this point because it doesn't matter what you do. You can't get reelected again. You're at least for 8 more years. So what do you care? Like he doesn't. I mean, he doesn't have to care anymore because he is weird sheriff term limited.
Yeah, he's got to placate maybe a few people that are against him. And
well, I mean, if he wants to take 4 years off and then come back 4 years later, he's got that option. But he has nothing to lose. Like what's he going to lose? Right. He can't lose another election. The recall process is impossible.
That's what I'll tell you. We looked at the recall process.
Maybe that's what I should do. I'll hit up Constance and Tyler and some of those people. It's like, let's start a recall on Sheriff Spangler. You'll get about 30% of the Knox County population.
Right.
All the Democrats. Because they don't like Spangler in the first place. But it frustrates me. Like I'm getting a little hot about this. Like it's really dumb. Because it was an opportunity. That's what sucks. This was an opportunity. It was an opportunity to fix problems.
Right.
Not make bigger problems.
I mean, that's the kind of downside to the social media.
Hold on, I'm sorry. Time out. Because you said the bad intelligence thing, right? Yeah. Maybe he was operating on bad intelligence. Who gives a shit? It's still, even with bad intelligence, because what would the bad intelligence be?
That's what I was saying. Like, it was his choice to still go upon making a quote-unquote official statement.
But my point is that even with...
he
Even if the intelligence was bad, telling him that this girl was a fucking asshole and cussed him out and called him bacon and all that kind of bullshit, even if that was the bad intelligence that he was operating on, it was still the same opportunity to figure out why. I go, oh, I get it. Uniforms killed your brother. I can understand why you might not like my uniforms, even though they're not the same uniforms, but uniforms killed your brother. I understand. Let's take a breath and let's talk about it and say, listen, you know, that was inappropriate. It was rude what you did to my officers, but I understand where you're coming from. Have a great life. We apologize for any issues we caused you in this particular situation. Even if the intelligence told him that it was bad, that was still an opportunity to fix, not make worse. And instead, he leaned in and made worse. Kimberly leaned in and made worse. These officers made worse. And then they all shut the fuck up about it. They all got, everybody's coming out. All the details are coming out. Sheriff's office closes down. No more conversation.
That's the weird kind of like blind knowledge is getting the intelligence from the people around you. To be like, okay, like this is all good. We vetted this. Whether they vetted it well enough or not.
But that's my point. Even if it's well vetted and it's provable that she was a total bitch to them, it's still an opportunity to close the gap, not open it. You should have taken the opportunity to close the gap. It doesn't matter. I
would say in this political climate, it's a debate upon to whether they want to be tough on crime or
that's not tough on crime.
Responsive.
This has nothing to do with crime.
Responsive to. Yeah, I agree. It's not really tough on crime, but I mean responsive to like the actual true story of it versus just jumping upon.
I can't.
The original story upon.
I am obviously capable of going down rabbit holes and believing in some bullshittery.
Right.
I can't figure out a way where it is a net positive. If you're going to come in and sit on my show and tell me that you want to close the gap between the community and the officers, that is a goal of yours as the elected officer for Knox County Sheriff's Office, that you want to get your department to be more in line with instead of opposed to the general public, there is zero combinations of things that could have possibly happened in this McAllister situation where the opportunity to close the gap was there and you decided to take the wide version.
Right. I mean, to an extent, there is a level of trust that is automatically given to law enforcement.
By idiots.
By idiots, whatever. These are people we have hired that we have quote-unquote vetted to go through the process of being a public servant and a public protector to where we think we should be able to think that we should be able to have the trust of the proverbial public trust of being able to do their job in the correct way and do it morally to where in that, and I admit it is a grandiose expectation, but in that general aspect, we expect them to do things correctly. So when we take a report from a police officer that says that this and this happened, this and this then correspondingly happened, we did this, suspected this or whatever.
Okay.
That we have that level of being able to take a law enforcement perspective of an account.
Right. I get where you're going with this. I disagree in the premise that my story and his story should be the same. Should have the same weight in conversation because I'm a person, he's a person. I get the idea.
I agree.
I get the idea that the uniform and the badge kind of implies a little bit more than may need to be there, but we do entrust that theory in it or whatever. That has nothing to do with what we're talking about. This was not a. This wasn't a report of an accident and the explanation of an accident, or even a live fire drill or anything else.
For what was reported, I don't know if any of the original of the three people, that the one person that got denied supposedly, I'm not sure.
Well, because this was a
bystander.
This was a non-work event, so there's not a set of reports from all the officers involved. This isn't something like they went to the scene of a crime and they did put their reports for the crime. This is a social event, for lack of a word. They're not submitting paperwork for this kind of event. Now, I'm certain at this point Sheriff Spangler's talked to all three of them.
Right. I know they at least asked about it. I don't know.
Right, and you take what you already said, and that we as the public put a little bit of trust in the badge and the uniform, and then you take the boss, who's going to put more trust in the badge and the uniform that works for him than some random black girl off the street.
Yeah.
Which again is especially as an elected official is the exact opposite of how you should look at it. As the elected official, you should put the most scrutiny on your team, on the people that you put out there in the field. They should be the ones that you're asking more questions, more details, more, because they should know better because of their job.
Right.
Where the random Joe off the street, you should give them a little bit more leeway with their statements.
Right. You
should be more trusting of them because they don't know any better. They don't look for the same things that you train your guys to look for.
No, not necessarily.
Huh? If you're a cop,
right,
and this other person over here is a civilian, and this thing went down, and I'm the sheriff, and I'm talking to both of you,
right,
I have a higher expectation of what you're telling me.
Yes.
More details,
okay. Yes.
More things that matter in the criminal version of it, and all that kind of shit.
Right.
But I'm still going to trust this guy's word over here because I have no reason not to. Now, if they conflict with yours, I'm going to dig. If they conflict, if your stories conflict, I'm going to dig harder into you as the officer.
Right.
You have more burden to prove to me that your version is the truth than this guy's.
Right. You should be able to articulate it. Yeah, that much better.
Right. But you should. You should be the one proving it.
I think I saw a guy with a gray shirt, and it was like, no, I saw. The officers in that perspective, like, no, I saw a guy that was 6'1" with a.
Because you're trained to deal with
shirt
that.
on, right?
Right, and so
to look at the details,
as the authority figure in the situation, I'm going to put more scrutiny on you, the officer, than them, the civilian.
Right.
And that is the inverse of what happens. At least in this situation, it seems to be. I'm taking my officer's word for it over the word of the individual in question, as well as their coworkers.
To an extent, yeah. I mean, they're taking their subjective. Which I'm assuming they've done, quote unquote. They've taken their subjective perspective upon the interactions with a business,
right? Which I don't think that I don't feel like that's what happened, because I feel like if that's what happened,
I said my original thing was, all right, there's three guys that walked in and they denied one of them. I'm like, this automatically, like, this doesn't make sense. If this person wanted to shit on the cops, they would have told every single fucking cop
the right move. Off. The right move here was for Sheriff Spangler to lay into the officers and apologize to the girl and apologize to McAlisters. That was the right move. That was the correct move. That was the community engagement move. That was all the things that he should have done as the elected body.
So now the cops have triggered this person?
Do what?
Now the cops have triggered this person?
No, they should apologize.
Why should they apologize?
When the cops left, saying we're going to put this on Facebook, which is a tacit threat.
Gotcha.
Which is a tacit threat. We're going to try to fuck you up in this business.
You didn't preempt the interaction with something that happened afterwards.
No, it should have been when the situation went down and these cops left because they got slighted by this girl or whatever whatever bullshit reason they put out there. Sheriff Spangler's immediate response should have been to talk to the officers particularly, and then go talk to McAlisters. And regardless of what the reality was, no matter what she did, the Spangler's move should have been to apologize to her and apologize to McAlisters and go. That was the right move, is to be like, hey, you know what? I'm sorry, because you have a very good fucking reason to hate cops.
Not that they would have recognized that. Or should have recognized that.
No, they shouldn't have. They shouldn't have at all. But that's fine. They should be big boys and be upset and then go bitch to their boss about it. And their boss says, okay, let me find out what's going on here. And then the boss goes and finds out what's going on here and says, hey, guys, just so you know, that girl that was kind of rude to you at the McAlisters, just for your insight, that girl happened to be that Anthony Thompson kid's little sister. So now, while your uniform didn't kill her brother, uniforms like yours did. So, is it appropriate of her? No. You shouldn't have to deal with that. That's not okay. I'm sorry, guys. That sucks. But can you at least kind of a little bit understand where she's coming from and where she might be a little uncomfortable to be in your presence?
there's no expectation of them automatically realizing this.
No, absolutely not. I'm not saying there is. I'm saying she says, "Fuck you, cops. I'm not serving your fucking bacon asses." And they walk outside, and they're like, "I'm going to report this to somebody." And so they call Kimberly, and Kimberly should be like, "All right, let me see what's going on here." This should never have been a public thing in the first place. But once it got to public point, it was the sheriff's office's responsibility who brought it to the public to be the ones to know the truth. Because again, take the cops out of the thing, right? Or put yourself in Sheriff Spangler's shoes, or whatever the fuck you want, however you want to put this. The reality of the story is that little girl's big brother was killed by police officers. There's no other way to describe it other than that. Whether you think it was justified or not, it doesn't matter. That little girl's big brother was killed by cops.
Right.
A sheriff's officer and a KPD, they're all the fucking same. Especially to a 15-year-old girl. It is very rational for her to react poorly to the presence of police officers. And if you're a sheriff who cares about public engagement, this was an opportunity, and instead of an opportunity to fix, you made it worse. You had the opportunity to say, look, officers, fellas, I'm sorry. That was rude of her. She shouldn't have done that to you. But hey, you got to understand, she has a very particular subset that makes total sense.
Right. That's going to take a high level of connectivity, essentially.
Good. Sure. Good. Yes. That would be an expectation I think the sheriff should have.
I can't envision a time where those officers would have gone into and then gotten denied.
Well, for one, it should be
called back to their dispatch and be like, "Hey, this place is giving me," because they wouldn't have the person's name, so there would have been no way to make any kind of connection.
It doesn't matter. That's my point. It doesn't matter. The point is,
I thought you were just saying they should be more cognizant of.
I'm not saying the officers should be initially in the original interaction, but I would say that anybody who, if it was egregious enough that the sheriff department actually wanted to figure out what the fuck's the deal with these guys, why are they refusing my guys, they should figure that out before they do.
Why would they dig into
it? Doesn't matter
that much.
You
don't know. You're expecting them to, and I'm asking
if they're going to go out and publicly try to get this girl fired from her job and damage McAlisters as a company, yeah, as a public servant body, they should fucking know the facts before they do it.
I agree. Once it gets to that point, yes.
So it shouldn't have gotten to that point without them doing the research, which they didn't do.
That's what I'm pushing back on, is your expectation that they should have immediately figured this out.
Yes, they should have figured this out.
Slowed their roll.
Yes, they should have figured this out and slowed their roll. Because they shouldn't have opened their fucking mouth before they knew the facts.
How do they find out that it's her?
It doesn't matter.
It does matter.
It partially matters.
You literally cannot fulfill the story until you realize that that's who that person is. I realize that that's what they inevitably found.
Okay,
but as far as the sheriff's department,
all right. So two parts. Two parts.
You've gotten denied. Do you call back to the general manager and be like, "Can you give me the list of all the people that were working between these times?"
When you're the sheriff of Knox County,
we want to do a background check on everyone and then cross-reference them with the names that may correspond with cases.
When you're the sheriff of Knox County, you call McAllister and say, "Hey, I got a couple guys that called me and said they got refused there.
Right.
We're wondering if this is a policy issue of you guys or if there's an individual situation." Okay, that would be the first step. Right. Which obviously McAllister's going to say, no, that's absolutely not a policy issue. When did this happen? Where did this happen? Let's look into it. Let's together.
Okay.
Both us McAllisters, because I would like to know that as the boss.
Right.
Which one of my employees refused to serve cops?
Right.
And then as we look into it and find out, oh, here's the situation. Hey, Sheriff, I looked into it. I dug up the tapes. I found the video of when it happened. The little girl that was working is Anthony Thompson Jr.'s little sister. It's not okay that she did that. That is not the policy of our company. We're not okay with she did that. But that would be the instantaneously easiest way to get there.
Why?
Why what?
Why would they automatically... Why would the McAllister's franchisee be like, "Oh, we found that. That was Anthony Thompson's sister." Why would they automatically make that connection?
Do you think they don't know she works for her? You think they don't know that's who she is?
Doubt it.
Okay, fine.
The franchisees, no.
You're right.
Would probably have no fucking clue.
Because you don't think they would call the GM and say, because obviously they're going to watch the video and say, oh, I know exactly this employee. No, they're going to go, hey, GM, I was looking at the video or whatever. They had this incident. Sheriff called me about it. What the fuck's going on here? That would be my move as the boss. This happened at your store at this time. What happened? You need to explain this to me because I got the fucking sheriff calling me, giving me shit about us refusing sheriff's officers.
Okay.
So deputies got refused in your store. What the fuck happened?
Right.
I would think that GM knows for fucking sure who that girl is.
Maybe so, maybe not.
Okay, then do you?
I doubt it's a fucking thing that she brags about that everyone fucking knows.
You're probably okay. Fine. Maybe he doesn't. So even if he doesn't know and says, "Okay, this is the girl,"
I mean,
this is who it is. Okay,
is Thompson a common last name?
It's not her last name anyway, so it doesn't fucking matter.
Okay, even more so.
Okay,
to the point that there's no fucking reason why the GM would automatically know.
Okay, so the GM doesn't.
Everyone that fucking works.
You're right. The GM doesn't know shit about any of his employees.
Fast food restaurant.
You're right. The GM doesn't know shit about any of employees.
Right.
And he says, "Okay, franchise boss guy, this is the employee. This is what this is where it happened."
Right.
The GM doesn't bother talking to the employee, saying, "Hey, why the fuck did you refuse to serve cops?"
I would highly doubt that the GM would talk directly to the employee. Yes.
Okay.
And my limited experience.
Okay, fine. So all right.
of retail.
Okay, so
okay.
I'm gonna agree with you.
I thought you were going to ask me a question
No,
that you already know the answer to.
I will. I don't necessarily agree with what you're saying, but I will agree with you for the sake of conversation. Okay, so
you agree or don't agree?
So
with
the chain of events.
You agree or don't agree with the GM talking to a cashier?
I think I would. I would go, hey, what happened here? What happened? Why did we refuse to serve these customers?
Okay. Is that your perspective as a small business owner, or is that your perspective as a general employee of other businesses?
Does it matter which one I answered?
I think it does kind of change,
I would say,
change the way you think about the interaction between
I would say if
a GM and a franchisee
okay,
of a semi-major corporation.
All right. So we're let's go real world example here. All right.
Real
so
world
one
example.
that I dealt with as the comparative franchisee in the conversation.
Yeah.
All right. So I get an email from our credit card processor. It says, "Hey, we've gotten chargebacks." It's like, what are these chargebacks? Let's look it up. So let's figure it out. So basically what a chargeback is, for those that don't know, is somebody runs a credit card and it shows up on their bill and says, hey, I didn't run that.
Right.
Whether it's a fraud, scam, kind of bullshit, whatever.
Right.
And so I'm like, what the fuck happened here?
Right.
Because we've gone 8 years and had 0 chargebacks. All of a sudden we have 4 in 1 week.
Right.
What the fuck happened here?
Mm-hmm.
Do you know who I talked to?
Who?
Talked to my partner first.
Yeah.
After that, I talked to my GMs.
Yeah.
Do you know what I told my GMs to do?
Just your GMs.
Talk to your fucking staff and figure out what the fuck happened.
Right.
That was the order of operations for me.
I agree.
Did I ever directly talk to the staff at the bottom line? No.
Okay.
I only talked to my GMs. What happened? Who did it? Why?
Right.
Explain this to me. Figure it out. Come back to me.
Right.
Okay, so in the comparative event of things...
Right, but the comparative event of your GMs versus, like, your GMs of a
How many fucking people do you think work at McAlisters?
On a shift? 12.
Okay. So what, 40 total employees? 50? Be generous?
Maybe.
You're a fucking shit GM if you don't know who 50 of your fucking employees are. If you don't know them all by name, you're a shit fucking manager. And even if we're going to say, okay, fine, you don't know all your employees by name, as the GM, the first thing you should be doing is not maybe going directly to the employee, but going to the shift managers who are on shift at the time.
Right. Yeah.
Hey, Bill, you were working when this event went down. What the fuck happened here?
Right.
Figure it out and get back to me.
Right.
Bill figures
downhill.
out. Right.
Absolutely.
Bill figures it out, calls me back. I take what Bill takes me. I roll it up to the franchisee. The franchisee takes it to the sheriff and says, hey, this is what happened.
Right.
Nowhere in that, the whole relationship with the brother thing comes out. Fine. It doesn't fucking matter. The end of the fucking day, no matter what series of fucking bullshitty events happen between here and there and every fucking where else, this was an opportunity for the sheriff's office to mend gaps, regardless of the sister part. Take the sister part out of the conversation. Just some little random fucking black girl that has nothing to do with this other incident.
Mend gaps of how?
This was an opportunity for the sheriff's office to say, hey, I understand that particular individual you had working through has a problem with cops. That's okay. It's not.
No. It should have never been introduced whatsoever.
I don't know what else to say. I don't know how else to explain the fact
I understand
if the sheriff gave a shit.
I understand like the sheriff's department made that out to be the reason for this, but that doesn't make it the fact that was the reason for
what the fuck are you talking
this
about?
Incident.
I don't understand what you're talking about, because what I'm talking about is gap fills, trying to make this less of an adversarial relationship between police officers and people.
Okay.
And this was an opportunity to do that. And what the sheriff's office did was the opposite.
Okay.
I'm
agreeing with you that the sheriff's department automatically went to, well,
no matter what combination.
This is what happened. Like, this person hated
right.
the sheriff's department because of this, and that was why they didn't allow our sheriff's department, and they don't back the blue.
And if Spangler was true to what he told me, and he's told public plenty of times that he wants to fill gaps, this was an opportunity.
Okay.
Regardless, it does not matter what McAlisters, the little girl did, the manager did, any of that. Any version of the McAllister side of it could have occurred.
Right.
And the opportunity was there for Sheriff Spangler to close a gap. Doesn't matter, even if the worst case scenario on the McAllister side was true, which it isn't. But even if it was, if Spangler had any fucking stones in his pants and wanted to be a big boy about it, this was an opportunity to close the gap. And instead, Kimberly Glenn and he went the exact opposite way. That's the only point I'm trying to get to in all of this.
Gotcha.
Now, the sister part puts another fucking level on that. But that's not important. It doesn't matter what happened on McAllister's side. Even if they were like, fuck you, pig bullshit, whatever, blah, 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 blah. And the cops went out there and called Kimberly and said, God damn it, Kimberly, these fucking assholes are rude to us just because we're cops and blah, 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 blah. It's bullshit. Kimberly should have said, I hear you guys. We'll look into it. Maybe not even looked into it. It should be a policy of the sheriff's office. If you get refused, if you get refused service or anything or whatever, if people are rude to you, fucking grow up. That should be the policy of the sheriff's office.
I agree, but in that egregious example of people just because it is just so uncommon that that PR person will jump on that fact that a business.
But what Kimberly should have done was to call McAllister's and be like, "Hey, I just got a report from some of my officers that this happened.
Right.
Can you help me fill in some gaps here?"
I agree. That would have been the logical thing to do.
Then that whole line of crazy bullshit that we just went down and
put out an official press release.
Well, she didn't put out an official press release. She put it on her personal page. Either way, she shouldn't have opened her fucking mouth about it until she had anything more than just
a quote-unquote semi-professional.
Right.
Under her name as the PR person of Knox County Sheriff's Department.
Right. And then Spangler doubled down on it, which makes it even worse.
Right.
We can't even lay it on her for being dumb. We can't even just be like, oh, Kimberly ran off in her mouth. She was being stupid. No, Sheriff Spangler backed it up.
Yeah.
And we're still at this. It's 2 weeks now. And it still continues.
That's kind of like the weird thing about news in general. If you don't comment on it, you're automatically just trying to
but it wouldn't have been news.
Differ from it.
It wouldn't have been news.
But
it wasn't news until she commented on it.
Right. I agree.
And so she made it. She made a story exist and then did the exact wrong thing.
It's that manufacturing of stories as something like big and outrageous.
Well, it didn't help that it was a slower news week,
which in fact, it was just...
All right, so...
It was a very small event.
Apparently we're running the same format as last week. We're going to close on the Greyhound story.
Oh, is there more?
There's more. There was a snippet in the News Sentinel that the city has offered the use of the downtown Cat Bus Center to Greyhound.
It was like after hours,
right? With limited hours and shit like that for $600,000
per year.
I don't know. I did not see the clarification of that, whether it was per year or per decade or whatever the fuck it is, which Greyhound's not going to take, obviously. And so it still comes down to this. It still comes down to the same thing I said last week. What drives me crazy about this story is the same people who were bent out of shape about the city-county coming together to help fund a baseball stadium. Those same people who were angry at the baseball stadium project that is now in the works are now complaining that the city is not doing enough to help Greyhound have a bus station. And for all intents and purposes, it's the same fucking thing. It is the city, it is a government entity spending tax dollars to assist a private corporation. So you can hate one, then you have to hate the other. You can't have it both ways.
I would imagine that there's more people that are backing a bus system versus having a baseball team come here for part of the year.
Okay. You might be right. And you could argue that it's better use of tax dollars. That's fine. But you have to argue it that way.
Right.
Because the city has decided it's worth $600,000 over some period of time.
It's going to fail in my mind, but hey, what do I know?
Do it?
It's going to fail in my mind, but what do I know?
The baseball stadium or the Greyhound?
The baseball stadium.
To pull an AC, to pull a proper AC out.
I'm going to say it's going to be a fucking failure.
To pull a proper AC out, you need to define failure.
It is not going to be profitable whatsoever in the long run.
To whom?
And that's where the big question comes into it.
I mean, Boyd's going to make money. There's no question there.
But yeah, okay, yeah, obviously. But will the city have any kind of returns upon as far as tax increase in that area and
the problem with
added? We're gonna add all these business districts.
I'm not disagreeing with you.
For the first 5 years, like the taxes that we get in this special district, we're not going to pay it back to you because we're special, and it's not going to go back into that fund of the amount of money that you guys help build this stadium. But
that's exactly what it's going to do.
The
taxes are going to go into paying back the loan for the stadium and not going into the general fund.
Oh, that was all deferred.
No, it's all instead of paying. So, like for the surrounding buildings, right? So, like for the old Greyhound bus station, which is the funny part of this. Right. So, when that guy redevelops it and takes it from $1 million property to a $5 million property, that difference in tax liability. So the property tax on $1 to $5 million. So let's say it's $10 per million. Not true. So they would have been paying $10. They'll continue to pay $10 in taxes. The other $40 that they should be paying in taxes, they still do, but it goes to paying back the loan instead of going into the general fund.
If it's owned by the Boyd Group?
No, if it's in the zone that they drew. If it's in the zone that they drew.
Gotcha.
For the special tax district. So
how would that encourage any new business to move in there? It's like, hey, we want you to bring your new business in here, but hey,
you got 30,000 people coming down a couple times a week that are going to want food and drinks and whatever.
Fucking how long? How long is the season? Outside of that, what are they looking at?
Concerts and other events going on the site. That's the sales pitch. This is not me trying to fucking.
I know.
Get on board with it.
I'm just saying. From an outside perspective, it's like, hey, the business you'll get 75% out of the year at best.
No, it's more. I mean, the real argument.
That awesome money you're making.
The real argument at play, the
75% out of the year, is going to come.
The real argument at play.
To us.
The real argument at play is whether the development over there would have happened anyway with or without the baseball stadium. That's the real argument. If we didn't put that baseball stadium in, would that district be developed up? Because you've got a bunch of stuff going into the original old city. You've got remodels over there. You've got a lot of stuff going down there anyway.
Right.
And so that will be a net gain to taxes and nightlife and all the other things.
And that's where it gets really complicated in trying to quantify.
Right. You can't prove this negative.
Yeah,
right. You can't prove this negative no matter what it is.
Well, what if we built a stadium? We would have all this other shit. And it's like, well, what if we built like a venue that was badass and some restaurants that were badass that cost the same amount of money?
Right.
That shit going year round.
But the reality is the guy that bought the Greyhound building, he bought that Greyhound building knowing that he could develop it.
Oh, yeah.
Knowing that he was going to develop it because the baseball stadium was going on there.
Totally. Because at this point, it's inevitable.
Right. But he bought it before it was inevitable. Right behind Bailey's.
I've seen like more than 2 stories of other cities that have tried to do the same thing, of a medium-sized town like us that has built this stadium and has not come to fruition whatsoever.
Right. I mean, to me...
I'm sorry. I can't put all my fucking carts or all my horses behind this cart of a stadium downtown, like all of a sudden, like, revitalizing downtown. Like everything's going to be so much greater once we have a baseball stadium down there.
Dude, all right. I
shit's going to be just wait, man. It's going to be fucking awesome.
Not to disagree with you like a Republican versus a Democrat, but I had that episode with Lauren Ryder and her cousins who live in Fort Wayne, which was the model stadium for this thing.
Right.
And that's all they did was talk about how much it revitalized their downtown.
Yeah.
Now, Fort Wayne then versus Knoxville now is not the same conversation.
Yeah.
Because I think the revitalization of downtown has already happened.
To an extent, yeah.
I mean, I think to say that this is going to save our downtown.
Market Square is not going to get any bigger than it is now.
Right. To save our downtown or anything, this is not the same story.
Yeah.
But again, the quantifiability of it's a really hard window to fill in those boxes on. But the investment is already bearing fruit. Past the point of the investment, no. But we have an apartment complex that is under construction currently behind the Baileys. That's a multi-million-dollar project that's going in down there, specifically because they knew the baseball stadium was coming. You got this guy that did this thing. You got that Hatcher Hill property right up there on Gay Street and Summit Hill. You've got activity happening down there that, for all intents and purposes, because that's the phrase of the week, is happening as a result of this investment by the city. The argument can be made that it's already bearing fruit. The argument could also be made that it was going to happen anyway. It's a hard negative to prove.
Right.
But I don't think a new bus station would have done shit comparatively. So let's think about it that way. Let's say, hey, the city's going to take this block of property where the stadium's going currently, and instead of building a stadium there, we're going to spend a bunch of money building a Greyhound station. Do you think the same investment around would be happening right now if that was the implied thing that was going to happen down there? I don't think so. I don't think so at all.
It's possible.
So, that's a show, people.
Yep.
That was a good one. That was a really good show.
Let's wrap it.
Outro?
Please be good to each other.
All right, that's a good one. That's it. What do you got? Come on. Affirmative words.
We're almost in agreement. We are on Twitter and Facebook. We are vaguely on Instagram.
Vaguely, yeah. That's good. Good word.
We hit you up every week.
YouTube, favorite popular, most popular podcast providers, that kind of thing. We do a weekly show.
Please reach out to us if you have any questions, any comments. It's greatly appreciated.
Ooh, I meant to tell you this. A friend of mine sent me a text. We are number 3 on their top listen to Spotify year in review thing.
Heck yeah. Thank you so much for that.
So shout out to the Sean. Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, sometimes Instagram, major podcast providers. Hit us up, like, share, friend, follow, tell us all that kind of thing. almostagreement@gmail.com. Tell me I'm wrong. I promise I'm probably wrong more than I'm not, but you got to prove it to me because I'm lazy. So anyway, we're almost in agreement. Thanks for listening, everybody. We're going to do another show next week. Holidays and whatnot are upon us. Christmas parade.